rookie pay at $5,000 a night, now covering size of load, I'm making anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000 a night. And our boat would work on the average 3 nights a week.
So when they deliver those, where do you meet to get the loads? Do you meet somewhere at a dock to get the loads of marijuana? And where does that come from?
They're coming from every corner of the Caribbean that's selling cannabis at that time.
Okay. And
Central America, South America.
Are you doing this in the middle of the water?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
You're going out how far?
We're going at least 30 miles. That's the international water limit.
You're going out 30 miles.
On the Gulf Coast.
You're taking it from there, and then what are you doing from that point on? Where are you taking that?
We're running it back into the 10,000 Islands area here in Southwest Florida.
Then you deliver it to someone that will go out and sell that?
No. We were what the government described as service providers.
Come out from the past, living in the future I created. Now, own an air minute, I'm in at a G. My NFT drop, you with that energy, stop. At all costs, I will protect funeral line the effect from the blast that I emit. I don't miss. I'm unfolding, rise up, king. I'd rather build or destroy.
Welcome to the Joe Pavich Podcast. I'd like to thank my sponsors, Edwards Contracting, First Source Title, and Above and Beyond. You can find my episodes on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, iHeart, or thejoepavichpodcast.com. And today I'd like to introduce my guest, Tim McBride, Saltwater Cowboy. Tim was a modern-day pirate and a pot hauler, and actually hauled over 60 million pounds of marijuana, which is insane to me, by the way, Tim. But I got him here today. He's got an amazing story. He's an author. We'll talk about the book today.
I'm local.
Local guy. But Tim, what's happening, man? Great to see you.
Yeah, you too, man. Appreciate the call and for having me on.
Man, I mean, you made it when you get Tim McBride on your show. I mean,
yeah, well, it's you and I have a relationship that goes back a little bit, and not only is this always fun for me, no matter who's sitting on the other side of me, but it's especially fun when it's somebody like yourself, somebody that I know.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And actually, I've seen some of your work, and you're actually really very good at what you do.
Thank you. I enjoy it. It's just fun. And, in real estate, it's all about people, relationships, and just sitting down
and that's what I first the takeaway from that I got from you and your father as well was that personality that, you don't have to initiate a conversation. I don't have to get you to talk.
Yeah, that's right. Walk right up to you.
You don't have to get me to talk either, man. Yeah. Just smack me to shut me up,
Oh, man, that's great. Tim, what a crazy story, by the way. And, some of the things I was reading, I've read the story, I've read the book, I've listened to your Audible, I've listened to you on Spotify shows and YouTube. We go on long trips.
Right.
Entertainment. You keep me entertained, for sure, because this story's nuts. But, the story is so crazy. And 162 years to life was one of the things that I saw, and I thought, how is that even possible?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
How is that?
160 years mandatory to life.
Man.
Well, that was just because of their inability to stop what was going on at that time.
Yeah.
From my point of view, it was like, it was laughable. Because they would come on the news, even the evening news, national news, ABC, NBC, and CBS, on nightly news, would give, an estimate on their success as far as percentage-wise on drug addiction in North America. Blah, blah, blah. They're throwing out these percentages, and we're all scratching our head going, where are you coming up with this number, man?
Yeah.
What's your baseline? Because from where we sit, for every 1 pound that you catch, 300 get through. So, what you're saying makes absolutely no sense at all.
That's right.
Because it was, it was ridiculous in a manner of speaking, to the point of having to write a book about it. Because and having it done in a proper way, not self-publishing, because those you pay for what you get, basically. Sure. I wanted this published, in the proper fashion, because the story that I told is a historical accounting of the, my actually growing up in the Caribbean marijuana industry.
Yeah.
So.
Man, it's crazy. You told me earlier, I've listened to the Audible, and you said that your voice comes through stronger in the actual book than it does on Audible, which is, that's cool.
The gentleman that read my story for Audible, his name is Wes Talbot. And I had the opportunity at pre-production, because I had put my hat in the ring to be the voice for my own book, but there was a contractual issue which involved my contract from St. Martin's Press, who published my book, being that they had Audible and Kindle and those things in their contract.
Sure.
And I said, no. And I put a line through those, because they're not getting that royalty. I'm going to get it. So as soon as I had done that and the contract was signed, that's when Audible got back to me and said, hey. So I got advanced in royalty. I get royalty from all Audible separately. But that being said, in pre-production, I wasn't able to, they had already cast the voice.
Yeah.
And they said, if you want to talk to the guy, or anything during pre-production, be my guest. Here's his number, So I called my agent, Peter, at Foundry. And he said, just call the guy, I don't need to set anything up. So I called him. And I go, he answers and goes, hello? And I go, is this Wes? And he goes, yeah, this is Wes Talbot. He goes, yeah, Wes Talbot. And I said, well, this is Saltwater Cowboy. And he goes, oh my God. So he starts freaking. He goes, I've been looking through, YouTube or things like that. At that time I wasn't, as visible as I am now if you go online. He was trying to find somewhere to hear my voice so he could understand my, a little bit of my inflection and stuff like that. And, but I did find out at that time that I was the 32nd book that he had read for Audible. And prior to me, he had done mostly Stephen King's work.
Sure.
So he does have that deep, rich voice, which
he does.
heard.
He does.
But one of the most unique things about it is, being that it's my story and I wrote it, it came from here onto the page, and if you read the book, like you had said, now that you hear me and you hear what I sound like and you hear the tonal and the inflection in my voice, it comes through the pages because I wrote every single word that you read. Now, when Wes was reading the book for Audible, it's just kind of crazy sounding, but when we had our conversations talking, he would never allow me to talk about the book. Don't tell me anything about what's coming or what's about to happen or what's happening in the book, because when you hear it in Audible, he's actually reading it for the first time.
Wow.
And all he's cueing on are my punctuation, because that's what a book is about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you have characters that don't have a voice that should match the person, like me. So like I said, now that you've heard me speak, when you read the book, you hear me. But there are a lot of books that are written don't have a specific character that has any type of voice, and you hear Wes.
Sure.
He's that guy. That sort of thing. But when I hear it, I get a little, because he doesn't have my inflection.
Yeah, of course.
But
and
it's still a great read.
And speaking of that, Tommy Chong read your book and sent it back to you autographed.
Yeah, he did.
What did it say in the book?
It said right here. I'll show you. We'll just turn it to the first page. Does this camera work?
Yeah.
You're going to show it right there? It says, great read, with an exclamation point. And all that squiggle down there, that's Tommy Chong.
It's amazing. In the marijuana industry, he's one of the goats.
Oh, he's an icon.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he and Cheech Marin were like one of the first two original activists, if you will, for lack of a better way of putting it. But they were, they were talking about cannabis and weed, in this, in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, and through that, in their comedy skits, just like it was an ordinary, everyday thing.
I watched every one of them. It
absolutely was, because I'm glad that we kind of went down this road just a bit, because in those days, when cannabis was people didn't talk much about it. It was more of a closet kind of an affair. But if you're in that culture at that time, when you're around people, that see it, it's something that they want to be involved in for some whatever reason. It's a cult kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And that's why they were so popular, and because they didn't care. It's just like me. I don't care what you think of me or anything about what I've done. You like me, love me, don't. I don't. I'm not winning any fashion contests here, man. Popularity contest or that.
I remember seeing all their shows growing up, and one of the funny ones I remember when they asked Cheech for his license. He was driving and there was smoke coming out of the windows,
right.
And he said, "It's on the back."
Yeah,
it's on the back of the car, my license. But some great comedy for sure.
Right.
So Tim, you got 162 years you're facing. So how many years did you actually do?
In the short of the long 4.
Wow.
And there's actually, that's in the book too. It talks about how I was, the federal sentencing guidelines changed dramatically, and we hadn't aware of it. In 1987, September 1st, 1987, the federal sentencing guidelines went to mandatory minimums. So now if you're caught, with any significant amount, which, we were messing with, say anything over 2,000 kilograms, now you're mandatory 10 years to life. If you're indicted with one indictment, there's 4 counts on that indictment. Each count has a mandatory 10 years to life on it.
Okay.
So if you just get one indictment, that's 40 years mandatory to life. You can get anywhere in between there. They'll keep you as long as you want, as they want. So the only way to get out from under that, these life sentences, if you will, would be to cooperate with them, give them what they designated as substantial cooperation. And as you read the book, you'll understand, you'll find out that our Operation Peacemaker, the one that got me and all the 5 crews that were working here in Southwest Florida, I was working them all as much as I could because I had, in a fashion, inherited connections. And that's all in the story as well. And we can talk about that, the earlier, beginnings. And I didn't aspire to become any of that, that which I did. I just stepped up and, said, hey, let's work. It wasn't a head thing, anything like that, because, even when I was a kid, on the back of a boat, there's a picture of in the book, our stone crab vessel. Actually, I'll send you a picture you can put up.
Good.
And it shows the actual boat that we were using, our stone crab vessel. And we just learned. I mean, there was no playbook, if you will, for the way I stumbled into it, and how I wound up becoming what I became and taking over and working everybody was just like, and I'm fond of saying I Forrest Gumped my way through it. It was just one thing after another was happening in front of me, and like I said, I never aspired to become what I did because, it just never occurred to me.
And it seems like for you, it was more about being able to move more marijuana than anybody else could move, cleaner, get it from point A to point B, and you didn't have really an attraction to trying to cut corners or do anything different or skim off the top. It seemed like you were just a guy trying to move more than anybody else could.
Well, yeah, it it didn't start out that way, and it never occurred to me in that way that I would move more than anybody could. When the opportunity arose to be able to move more than what we had done as we were younger was just an evolution of the industry and of itself. And when you talk about, the loads getting bigger and more compacted, there was a reason for that. Earlier on, when I was first, introduced to this industry, my first job, when I came, I grew up in North Carolina. The book also explains my humble origins. There was nothing really dysfunctional in any way about my life, growing up that caused me to become an outlaw, which is a term I'd rather be using than criminal, because criminal just, involves too much other, violence or whatever you can attach to that. Outlaw, I don't necessarily agree with your law, so I'm going to work outside that law a little bit.
Sure.
Hence outlaw. But, that being said, coming to Florida, to work on my buddy's brother-in-law's house. They were just building a house, his sister and he. And they had a job for me lined up to work on building the house and this and that. He was going to work on a stone crab boat, And I said, cool. He asked me, did I want to go? Hell yeah, I'll go. That next day I packed all my stuff and came down to Florida, man. Yeah. And I worked in the house for about a month or two till it was finished in that, and the guy whose boat my buddy was working on at the time, Captain Billy, there's 3 people on the boat. There's a captain and there's 2 pullers, a guy on the starboard stern and port stern. Pull a trap, drop a trap, pull a trap, drop a trap. That's how it works. We had 6,000 traps, our one boat. We would pull 600 a day, so it was bust-ass work. It'd make a man out of you real quick. So Billy didn't really know this guy from Michigan who was on the boat working the other side where Mark was working, my buddy. So they worked his ass for a week, and he quit. They just worked him to death, man. He'd had enough, and then he quit. Opened that spot up for me. That's how I got onto the boat. That's how I got started.
It's almost like putting a couple guys on the boats that go into the Barents Sea. The deadliest catch, right?
Yeah.
They're excited. They get on the boat. a week. Well, I guess you can't
Right.
leave the deadliest catch. I think once you're on there,
Yeah.
you're on. But
yeah, no, there's no. Yeah, those guys don't come back for weeks at a time.
yes,
you know,
you better want it coming in.
Which is really brutal, and and I don't in any way want to sound like that's our industry compares in any way with that one, which it doesn't. There are parallels. When you see them throw that grapple hook out there and you have two bags floating with a line between it. Now they're pulling a trap that weighs just itself without crab in it 1,000 pounds. And they're using, 3/4 inch or 1 inch rope. Ours are 3/8 inch nylon trap lines with a buoy on it, not even the size of a soccer ball.
Yeah.
But the trap weighs anywhere from 50 to 60 pounds because it's got, 6 inches of concrete in the bottom of it. So when you push it off the boat,
keep it on the bottom.
That too.
And it lays flat, so the
when you
trap
push
can
it
open.
off the boat, it'll land right on that concrete bottom rather than on its side or on its top or
Sure.
whatever like that. So they're built that way. But we're pulling 300. I'm pulling 300 and he's pulling 300. So when he's pulling his, mine's being pushed over. Now he's working his trap and cleaning and whatever. The captain's rushing up to the next buoy. I grab mine, and when I pull mine on board, he's already baited and cleared, and his trap goes in. So we always leave one where we pick one up. We go 17 to 25 miles one direction, have lunch, skip over 50 yards, and come back the other direction for the other 300, so we're not twice as far away from home. But
Sure.
That being said, that's the scenario that was pitched to me when they said, hey, dude, they got rid of that guy from Michigan. Come on, get on the boat. Let's go to work. I said, okay, cool. So they explained that scenario to me. You get on at like 3 in the morning, depending on where you're going. Take 2-3 hours to get to the place where we're going to pull our trap, so you get in the bunk, which is in the wheelhouse, and once you cast off and you sleep till the captain wakes you up.
Yeah.
So my first day on this boat, having been in part of this scenario about how it all works and whatnot, I wake up that next morning and the boat's not moving and the sun's shining, and I'm thinking, well, I thought we were supposed to be, my inner monologue, I thought we were supposed to be working by now. Excuse me. So I lean over and I look out of the bunk, and there's Captain Billy there with a big grin on his face, and he's at his chair in front of the wheel, and he goes, we're not hauling traps today, Timmy. He says, we're going to hang out here all day long, just goof off all day, and we're going to unload a pop boat from Colombia tonight. And I said, okay. It was
Sure.
just tongue-in-cheek to him and my buddy because they knew what was going on, so they kind of shanghaied me in a fashion, but they knew I'd be okay with it, So that was my introduction.
Man.
And I just turned 20, I was 22, just turned 22 years old. And that night we brought in 15 tons. That was my first time ever.
15 tons.
15
What
tons.
does 15 tons look like, by the way?
I don't know. Let's see. A typical garage, a typical one-car garage.
Okay. Filled.
Stuffed floor to ceiling,
Okay.
wall to wall, in a cube, probably something like that of bales,
Yeah. And on those waters, did you have to worry much about low tides, things like that? I mean, because that's a lot of weight for that type of boat.
Simply because how it works, and we can get into that because we were actually considered by the U.S. government to be one of the most sophisticated smuggling operations ever uncovered in North America, is what they called it. So the guys hear that, they start to laugh because we never thought of it like that. It was just how we grew up. And that 15 tons. I never saw one that small after that. That was just
That was the smallest one.
That was a test.
That was a
me
starter.
One.
Yeah.
That was a test.
Yeah.
The new guys.
You put
kind
your foot
of
in the
thing.
water, your toe in the water with
Yeah,
that,
because
15.
there's no playbook for this
Yeah.
this stuff. You just go do, and when the boat shows up and they start throwing that shit, you start stacking it.
Yeah.
You put it everywhere on the bow and the sides and everywhere you can. But 15 tons really wasn't loading the boat all that significantly. Because we could put 25 tons on that boat
Yeah.
and still run with it.
Would they come in pallets, or would they
Right.
come in pounds, or how would you have to unload them?
No, well, that's a great question because that's a great segue to the evolution that we began talking about earlier about how the loads got bigger as the years went by. This is a good leader into that, which is simply the fact that in the early days they were coming to us and they weren't packed. Like people who understand the cannabis industry, to a fashion, know that the Mexican brickweed, they used to call it, and the Caribbean marijuana, in its latter years came compacted in bales. They were regular, they were all the same size, the same weight, stitched burlap on one end. You could grab the stitches and pick the bale up. They were easy to handle. They stacked better, things like that. In the early beginnings, they were what we called pillow bales. There was no compaction to them whatsoever, man. These things were like
air. There was just so much, right?
Yeah, there was like somebody stomped on it with their foot, and then duct taped that bag and put it in another burlap bag and then sewed that one shut.
Which makes your job a lot tougher.
Oh my God, because exactly, because they were coming all different sizes and shapes and different weights and that, and there was no rhyme or reason to it really. You'd get a load every now and then, one that was really stupid, and depending on how much there was, it always wasn't a matter of just us going out to the boat, and pulling up to it and they start throwing it down on us. A lot of times we had to get on that boat, help that crew get it out of the hole onto the deck, and then
it's a lot of work.
Throw it onto our deck. So, it is a lot of work, and I can remember one night in particular, we were unloading this freighter, and this thing was 400 feet if it was a foot. And, we had to go up and help the crew, but we had to make a pyramid stack out of them as we could, and we bucket brigade them up a guy, and the guy on the top, so the guys on the deck, weather deck, could grab them. Because when these freighters like this pull into the docks, that's where the cranes are. So when you open this midship hatch, there's no crane to take any of this shit out. You got to make your own way. And this, we're talking about, higher than your ceiling. This stuff
so you're making a ladder.
Right. So we're down in there, long story short, and there's dust flying. There's seeds everywhere. And I look over at my buddy Mark, and I start laughing out loud. I said, dude, you should see your face. He looked like a hamburger bun with sesame seeds. All these seeds are stuck to his face. He goes, man, you should see yours. It was just like that, all shaky and shit. We would bring these loads in, we would get it off our boat, and it didn't occur to me in that time, because I was a kid, what happened to it beyond that. And a lot of this occurred to me, like what I'm imparting to you right now, came in retrospect as I look back on it, this evolutionary change, because I wasn't recognizing it as it was happening. And once we get this stuff off our boat, we got to go offshore. And we spent 2-3 hours, scrubbing and cleaning and, in the corners with knives and screwdrivers, getting all these seeds, because the Caribbean marijuana at that time, didn't matter where you got it from, had seeds. It was seedy stuff, but it was still smokable. It was most popular. That's all you could have. If you wanted it, that's what you had. But we would take all this time to clean, because if anything became suspect that evening, and all of a sudden they're out there looking around and they're arbitrarily, coming up and stopping boats. If they find one seed on your boat, you're done. They have the ability to take you and confiscate your boat and the whole.
Yeah, you don't want that.
So after a while, we had done this about maybe 4 or 5 times, and just, oh my God. So we get on the boat one morning, like we're going to go fishing, we're going to go stone crabbing, and there's like 3 or 4 rolls of plastic visqueen and 3 or 4 rolls of duct tape. So we're not crabbing that day. We're going to haul that night. So what we did was we lined the deck with this plastic and duct taped it over the rails and up against the back of the wheelhouse and made a big bowl out of the back of the boat where we would stack this stuff. Bring it on, man. We brought that stuff on, and it was shaky. And the thing of it is by the time we got it, there was no telling how many times it had already been handled.
Yeah.
So there's some of them got holes in it, and they're leaking and, like this, and that's how you're getting this mess.
Sure.
Because I had we were sweeping into piles on the deck and taking our ice shovel and whoo, and I'm shoveling probably more stuff off the deck of that boat than any 10 men can smoke in their lifetime.
Really?
Every time we cleaned this boat. It was nasty. It was just shaky everywhere. But now we get it off.
You got a system.
We go offshore and we just gather up all this plastic that's on deck, tie a chain around it with an anchor on it, and throw it off the boat.
You were working smart.
Clean.
Working smart.
Yeah.
Not hard. Hard and smart, I guess.
What became of that ultimately, that now we're on this evolution, stage of what's going on with the bales. Around 1979, 1980-ish, around in that was when the introduction of the household and commercial trash compactors started coming onto the, you started seeing them in commercials and things like that.
Yeah.
And so a couple of the older generations went, hey, here's what you're going to do. They took like 5 compactors and a couple generators down there to the jungle and said, here's what you need to do. Now they're all coming out compacted. They're all coming out basically the same weight. And they're all, and I'll send you a picture you can put up, I'll show you what a stack of them looks like. Yeah. And having done that now that they're compacted, now we're getting bales that are about 80 pounds each. and they're all the same, and they stack perfectly. The crab traps that we're working with, our boats are designed perfectly for stacking crab traps, 600 of them at a time, and taking them offshore. Now, 600 traps at a time, that's only 33,000 pounds. That's just a little over 15 tons. Our boat would run. Woo, woo. We had the fastest boat, and today that boat's still running in a fleet on the East Coast. It's the fastest boat in any fleet it gets into. And it's the most powerful boat in any fleet that it gets into. Even today, it's that way.
Wow.
But we would get now 15 tons was nothing. And the second day I went out on that boat, we loaded up, got a lunch, got on boat, cast off. I got in the bunk. Same thing. I woke up, sun shining, there was nothing going on. I look out, and Captain Billy goes, we're going again tonight, Timmy. We did 22 tons the second night.
Jeez.
So that was what, 57 tons in two nights. My introduction to that, but that was rookie pay. That was $5,000 a night, and I thought, oh man, I thought the sky came.
At that time, $5,000's what?
Well,
40 today, 30.
$10,000, even $10,000 was a significant blue collar wage, in the early 70s.
Well, that's when. Didn't you have a Cobra? Was it Cobra?
Yeah, I had a Mustang
They were probably
Cobra.
asking 10 for that at the time, right?
Well, no, I paid $5,600 for that thing, brand new in a showroom. Before I went to Florida.
Yeah, one night.
Just one night.
Almost one night.
One night. That's $5,000 each night.
Yeah.
So I was.
But one night of pay, you can go walk in and buy one of those almost cash.
Exactly.
They might sell it to you for $5,000.
But the point being is that didn't stay that way. That was rookie pay. Now that the captain had a crew that he understood that was willing and able to do the work, it changed. So now I'm being paid according to the size of the loads. And our average loads, like I said, I never saw 15 tons. That was small. That was small potatoes. We never saw that after that. We were mostly in the 20, 25, 30, 40 ton, 50 tons. We did 55 tons one night, not because of the money. It was just see if we could do it for one thing. Plus, it was just to get the work done.
Sure.
Because there were boats lined up out here as a kid, working as a kid, like it was a parking lot, man. And there's even a story in the book where we were out there 3 boats going to get 60,000 pounds and spread it between 3 boats so we could run a little quicker. Plane comes out of nowhere, throws a milk carton out of the window with a note in it saying, one of you's got to go over here because we got another boat needs to get unloaded. I mean, that's how I grew up, But more to the point, back in the, with the bales and type of thing, but once that changed, now the loads got bigger and the loads got heavier, So the pay got better. So rookie pay at $5,000 a night, now covering the size of the load, I'm making anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000 a night. And our boat would work on the average 3 nights a week.
That's crazy.
It was just insane. And when you introduced me, that 80 million pounds, it's, the government, our U.S. government, benevolent U.S. government estimate is somewhere in the area of, from beginning to end, over 100 million pounds was brought through the Everglades. Not by me, by everybody. And like I'm very fond of saying too, I mean, I can't take the pat on the back for all this that I got myself involved in. It took a lot of people. It took hundreds of people to make this work.
Sure.
And when you're talking about legend and all this, and you're this and you're that, well, from my point of view, it's a whole other reality. I don't see it as in that way. I see it in a way that it was just how we grew up, man. This all we knew was 30-ton, 40-ton loads, and stuff like that.
So when they deliver those, where do you meet to get the loads? Do you meet somewhere at a dock to get the loads of marijuana? And where does that come from? Like
you mean the motherships?
Yeah, where are the motherships? Where are they coming from?
They're coming from every corner of the Caribbean that's selling cannabis at that time.
Okay. And
Central America, South America.
Are you doing this in the middle of the water?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you're going out how far?
We're going at least 30 miles. That's the international water limit.
You're going out 30 miles
on the Gulf Coast.
You're taking it from there, and then what are you doing from that point on? Where are you taking that?
We're running it back into the 10,000 Islands area here in Southwest Florida.
Then you deliver it to someone that will go out and sell that?
No. We were what the government described as service providers.
Oh, okay. That's a good description.
And Well, yeah, to further that description, what it really amounts to is simple fact that we never wanted to own this stuff. We never wanted to sell this stuff. We had the ability and a way to get it to you.
Yeah.
I mean, we're bringing it through the 10,000 islands. We'll put up a shot of the 10,000 islands and my little island that we grew up on, Chokoloskee, which is in the back of the 10,000 islands. We're talking about a stretch in the northwest corner of the Everglades National Park, of stretch of shoreline that extends from Marco Island south almost to Shark River or the Lost Man's River. There's nearly 40 miles or better at some points 6 miles deep of nothing but a labyrinth of islands, 10,000 islands, and Mother Nature saw fit to build that right in our backyard. So that being said, that's where we played as kids. We run around that shit like, it was your backyard. We knew it as well as you did.
You knew every shortcut with every
tide.
What tide can get you where?
Where the deep water was at certain tides. You learn that stuff. And your cues are visual markers. Trees, a roost maybe where there's birds have crapped on trees. That's your cue. That's your visual. There's no signs. There's no, arrows pointing, go this way, go that way. And we're running these pathways at night when it's dark. Now, when we go off to meet the mothership, they're called, the mother vessel, from whatever country they're from. They come from Jamaica. They come from South America. They come from anywhere in Central America as far as Belize. And a lot of times they will stay. If you can get them, if we know the vessel that's hauling it, which a lot of times we didn't because we didn't care about that part of it. That was the adults part of it, because there's two ways of doing this, being service providers. I'll tell you about that in a second. But depending on where these boats are coming from, these ships are coming from, and depending on how much is on them, we're only given certain amounts. Okay, there's 45,000, there's 60,000 on this boat, so that's what we prepare for. And a lot of times, it's not uncommon for that to be more than that. And there's a story in the book, about that too as well. But when you talk about, the scenario by which it takes place, we would typically sit off the mothership. We have the coordinates, and Captain Billy already knows coordinates where this boat's going to be sitting. And we would sit what's called on the horizon. The horizon on the water is anywhere, depending on how big the ship is. And if you've ever been offshore in a boat here in Southwest Florida and you watch the shoreline disappear, when that tallest building on the shoreline disappears, you're at the horizon. You're at the point at which you can't see beyond that. We would sit just beyond that. It's usually, 10 miles or so, 12 miles, depending on how big the vessel is or whatever. We would sit off the horizon and wait till about 3-4 hours before the sun goes down. That's when Captain Billy will make a call. He'll put out a particular call sign that's addressed to that particular vessel. He's the only one that's going to answer it. So when we call out the call sign, whatever it may be for that vessel, and we get an answer back, they know we're coming. So they have time between then and when we show up to start bringing that stuff up. Mm-hmm. If it's a big ship or whatever, get it out on deck, get it ready for us, because, the clock started. The minute that call sign was answered, the clock starts ticking. That load has to get on our boat and has to get into shore and has to go into the island before the sun comes up. Whole job done and secure for the day. And that takes place we're heading toward this boat. We get up to the boat and we start loading. And we know, according to the size of the bales and the way they feel, how many we should probably get that should be the load. Because we can only take so much because the boat's starting to do this. Sure. And if the boat goes down too far, what happens is we have what's called scuppers. And the scuppers on any boat are where the spray or the rain or the water hits the deck. It can run out those holes on the back of the boat on the deck level. Well, there's a limit to how much you can put in the boat for the scuppers start to go underwater. If the scuppers go underwater, you're sunk.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, you capsize, right? It
done.
Fills up too much water, nothing's leaving.
Right. So we know, about how much we should have. Then we make it. Then we run. So now, depending on how long it took us to load the boat, usually takes 3 hours, 4 hours, something like that, because it's a arduous process, and we're typically not out there by ourselves. We're out there with 1 or 2 other crab boats just like ours. We'll grab 20 tons, and we may get 60 tons. We may get 80 tons altogether between all 3 boats. Just depends on how much is on that ship, we're told. I've seen boats out here as a kid. It was as much as 400,000 plus pounds on them, and we take a week to go out and unload the dang thing.
Yeah.
But once we get it and run into shore, we've got from the time we get loaded, however miles we could get that boat to come closer to the shore, the better off we are. A lot of times they'll stay in territorial waters, which is 30 miles. But there's also an agreement between us and the shrimpers that you don't come at crab season, don't come within 30 miles of the shoreline, because that's where we crab trap. Our buoys are in there. You go in there dragging your nets for shrimp, and that's what happened. There was a big war. They started curling our buoys up. You get down a line, you can screw 50, 60, 100 traps up, and ball them up.
Oh, yeah.
And they're worthless. So a couple shots were fired back and forth. Ultimately, they agreed. Now, when you look on the radar at night, 30 miles, and all you see is shrimp boats. Nothing 30 miles to the shoreline, the odd boat here and there, but primarily you see the shrimping fleet out there at a certain time of the year. Those boats would come in and they wouldn't stay any further. They'd stay in all those little blippy mess, so they wouldn't stick out. So we had that end covered a little bit. But we get it off that boat. Now we've got to get it inshore. And we're drafting pretty much now, like you alluded to earlier, going through the shallows. We're not going through the pass with this damn boat because it ain't going to make it. We can come out to the edge of the islands where anywhere's from 15 to 20 to 25 smaller boats. Typically, in the earlier days, they were using mullet skiffs and T-crafts, and Morgan Boats, family boat builders in Naples, were building some rather decent shallow water drafting boats, fast boats. The T-crafts were a small, shallow drafting vessel that was real sleek. Twin 235 Evinrudes on them. They could get up and run with 40, 45 bales on them. These people, all these boats would come out to us like flies on a garbage can. 2 guys on a boat. 1 guy jumps on our mountain, because you can't even see the boat really sometimes. If you saw the boat from the air, it would look like a big mountain of pot going through the water with radar spinning on it like that. Because we had we would stack them on the wheelhouse, and then on the sides and on the bow, anywhere you could stick this stuff, because take as much as you can without sinking the boat was the whole idea.
And time was so important, because if they're behind, puts you behind, and then you can't take as much because you got to get to the shore by sunrise, right? And
we got to get into shore prior.
Yeah,
because they got to run and get it through the islands.
Enough for them to unload it to get it back through. Right?
So what these smaller boats are doing now is, they're making runs. They'll make as many trips back and forth to unload our boat until we're empty. Now what they're doing is, depending on how much the load is, if it's 20 tons, 40 tons, 50 tons, whatever the case may be, that would depend on how many people's houses we're using. Because what they're doing is they're taking all the furniture out of these houses and stuffing them into the garage, one end of the garage. And we would start filling houses full from floor to ceiling, kitchen, living room, dining room, bathroom, closet, everything, every place you could stick a bale, there's a bale in these houses. And when that house is full, pull the door shut, go next door and start filling that one. Now this all happens, between sundown and sunup. You get it in that damn house. So what's also taking place at the same time is not uncommon, is for, how it gets to Miami the next day is when the shore crew takes over. When the sun comes up, cock crows and sun's shining, like that's when the stuff goes on the move to Miami in broad daylight. Because we were, masters of hide it in plain sight. Because who in their right mind, really, seriously, would ever suspect that at any one day there's 20 tons of weed coming off of that little island?
How would you get it from the house to the trucks to get it out of there? How would they do? That wasn't you, right? You were just you were in the middle.
In the beginning, I didn't understand how the shore crew worked, but as time went on, you can only work for maybe 3 nights in a row, and then you got to break for 3-4 days, because that'll kill you if you keep working like that. If we're talking about moving anywhere from 800 to 1,080-pound bales, sometimes twice a night. You can't keep up that pace. That's why of a town of just under 400 people, half the town was involved in it for nearly 40 years and 3 generations, because everybody was taking their share, working. And the crews were like, okay, Timmy, Johnny, Teddy, and Willie, okay, you guys sit back a couple days. These guys work, and then when these guys are done, you guys work, and it was just passing the work around. Everybody's making money,
But at that time, the Chokoloskee wasn't fully built out. Really, I mean, there was homes out there, but it wasn't full by any means. So
No,
there
there
wasn't
were
neighbors next to these homes probably that had houses filled from top to bottom, right?
Right. On Chokoloskee and even Everglades, Chokoloskee in particular is where I spent most of my time on the island. Was there were still areas of woods you had to walk through to get to, across the island. But the town's population today remains the same because, well, face it, they're not making any more island.
Yeah.
And they're not building this way because who wants to do that to a little town like that? So the population, even if you Google it, I think today it'll even say 397 people.
Yeah, it's small.
Something
there's
like
only a
that.
couple streets in there.
Right. And, being on Chokoloskee and what have you, that's why, and moving the amounts that were being moved, when I was a kid, it took half the town to make that work.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most remarkable things about the story in the way it's told is that this was a secret kept for 3 generations. People didn't have a clue to, they might suspect or have an inkling or whatever, but unless you see it, even the sheriff of Everglades, C.W. Sanders at that time, he wasn't a dumb man. I mean, he was a smart man, believe me. Yeah. He's sheriff, for Christ's sake, for I don't know how many years, but he never saw it, so there isn't anything he could do about
That's
it.
That's right.
He'd hear it just like everybody else
would
would
hear the rumbles.
I was hearing these ghost stories too when I first got there. Now all of a sudden I became one of those ghosts. And I went, oh, okay, here it is.
Yeah.
But it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for me. It was just, it wasn't unexpected. It wasn't, spectacular. It wasn't a big I mean, that's all we knew.
It was your life, yeah. Now, when you're sitting out there on the boat and you're waiting for the delivery, right? What are you guys doing out there? You got rods in the water? Are you acting like you're fishing at night? I mean, because, you're not just sitting out there in a boat.
No,
right?
We're drifting across some rock, maybe catching a few, some grouper.
You're acting like you're doing something.
We're smoking weed all day long. We're swimming and diving around the boats, and if there's a couple of our boats or 3 of us, we're roped together and we're just hanging out there all day.
Could you see anything for miles out there?
No. Yeah. No. I mean, it was you're in an area where even today, even more so then, there's no boat traffic out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're off of Everglades. Anything south of Everglades City is Everglades National Park.
Sure.
And Big Cypress National Park. There's nothing there. There's Flamingo Ranger Station. That's it. You have no choice but to go from Everglades east to Miami, which brings us back to these loads coming out of the houses. I don't want to stray off of, something that people are probably going, well, you never finished it. But as the houses are being loaded by the boats and the bail handlers and on shore that night, it isn't uncommon for the people that own a car, a truck, a van, or whatever is going to be used to haul this stuff to Miami the next day. And that's what we were using. That's when the women in town, and the young gals and stuff, and how a lot of the town got involved in it and making money was that it took a lot to get the stuff off the island into Miami, for crying out loud. We're talking about, I've seen houses, I've seen it at times where I can't tell you how many houses that were on the edge of the island that had a dock in front of them were stuffed with weed. I mean, there's a chapter I wrote in the book where I did a rough calculation to the tune of 1.6 million pounds in 28 nights. Some of the guys and gals at the time would tell you it was more than that or less than that or whatever, but I left it at 28. 1.6 million pounds come off that little island and went to Miami.
It's crazy.
And the cars and the trucks and the vans and anything you can stick a bale of pot in were being used. This is how the other half the town gets involved. Well, it wasn't uncommon for the person that owned the vehicle to come out while we're loading a house that night, get his van full, get his pickup truck with a cabber on the back of it full or whatever, drive it back into town and park it in the front yard. Just let it sit there. Now, everybody that's working, and it typically takes anywhere from, 60 to 100 people to make one job work. You've got all this in motion, all this different sequence of events taking place. Now you've got it from offshore, you've got it inshore, you've got it in the houses. Now you got to get it to Miami. This is the next day when the sun comes up. So the owners aren't driving these vehicles. They're hiring somebody and paying them to drive to Miami. So everybody working has a 2-meter radio, a 2-meter walkie-talkie type radio that has a 5-digit combination, which in those days was virtually unscannable. So we could just pick a combination. Everybody knew the combination, so you can talk openly and free. Hey, there's a car coming like this. Well, we don't know who it is. We'll check it out. Even the drivers had a radio. So the person that owned the vehicle would call their driver in the morning when their signal. And these cars and trucks and vans are being let go in intervals. And it's not a mad rush to take it to Miami, because the people in Miami have a way of doing it similar to ours, only in reverse. We'll get to that. The owner of the vehicle would call the driver, say, okay, it's at the house, come on and get it, and tell him where in Miami, say off of Chrome Avenue on the west end, west side of Miami, in Kendall or someplace like that, in a plaza, similar to the one we're in right now, a little bit bigger maybe, and our people would drive over to this plaza, with this radio at their side, and they would know exactly where to go. And we developed what the law enforcement now describes as a dead drop. And what that is, quite simply, is our people would take their vehicle full of bales into this plaza's parking lot, park it, get out, and go window shop for a little while somebody from our side was with the Cuban partner's side, because the Cubans owned it. We didn't want to own it, like I said earlier. We don't own this stuff. We get paid to go get it wherever you want it from and move it and put it on your doorstep. That costs $175 a pound, by the way, if you want it done that way. We'll go get it, we'll bring it, we'll put it on your doorstep, $175 a pound. So let's go with that scenario for now. So our drivers get to the plaza, get out, and we shop, and our guys going, that's our truck, that's our van, that's our, blah, 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 like that. They're putting people in it, and they're going to empty it and bring it back empty. Our guys get in it, take it home, and if there's enough time, bring another load back. The dead drop is there because nobody in Miami will know where it came from in Everglades. Nobody in Everglades knows where it came from or where it's going to in Miami. Plus, the guys that are driving it from Everglades to Miami don't know where in the hell it's at, because the owners had it loaded and then called the driver to come and get it. So there was a bit of a safety valve instilled in that. Not only that, the people that are driving all these, tons and tons and tons at a time, day after day after day, we have on the road what's called spotter drivers. And they're paid $5,000 cash each day. All they have to do is drive from Everglades to that plaza and back. And there's anywhere from 8 to 10 of them, depending on how many cars and trucks are running. And they're staggered too, all along the way. So if you run into a problem anywhere along the way, it was very simple, but we knew where everybody was. Where Highway Patrol is, where Wildlife is, where National Park Rangers are, where the sheriffs are, because there aren't that many of them. I just counted all of them. There's 4. We've got somebody sitting next to all 4 of them. We know where everybody is. From Miami to Everglades, the Highway Patrol, we know where they are, But should someone stop you, perchance, or whatever, you can't get away from it. There's 120 miles of nothing but 2-lane 41, and if they should get stopped, they're instructed to get on the radio and say, hey, okay, gig's up. So what the owner will do, he'll in turn call the law and report his vehicle hasn't been stolen.
Oh, okay.
Because he's looking out in the driveway and it's gone. Okay. So after everything's said and done with, they'll use it as evidence. He'll get it back because it was stolen from him.
Sure.
So that was part of the gig.
So Tim, I'm assuming that's happened.
Very rarely.
Okay.
Very seldom.
In your career, how many times?
2.
Okay. And everything was okay. Reported stolen.
Oh, yeah. The boats are done the same way. Captain Billy didn't own the boat; his daddy did. And we had our escape was a chase boat. There's a picture of one in my book.
Yeah. And
that's just a go fast boat that'll do 60 miles an hour before your butt won't even hit the seat.
Yeah.
And you just get off that boat and get onto that chase boat and leave that boat. Let them have it.
In those 2 times, did they take all the marijuana that was stuffed in this?
Just what was in the vehicle.
Okay.
But they didn't get the drivers.
Yeah. Drivers were okay, but they took everything.
Yeah, drivers got away.
Yeah.
The reason they got away is what I was coming to was that, by way of the radio. You call and say, hey, like this. And what they're instructed to do is wait for whoever stopped you to get between you and their vehicle, throw that son of a bitch in reverse and nail and smash the holy crap out of his front end, because now you're a ton, maybe a little more heavier than the car normally is. Yeah. You're going to smash the crap out of this guy's car, and he's not going anywhere. Because 9 times out of 10, they've also got, between the cars and the trucks and the pickup trucks and the vans, they've got a low-slung trailer hitch, a Reese hitch, used for high, elevated pickup trucks. They have that long stem on them, so they can tow a vehicle with them, or a boat with them. Well, they just pull that out and turn it up, so it's up and the ball's up here.
Yeah.
They'll run that right through the radiator of the guy's car and take off. Well, you're not going to outrun his radio, but we know where the other guys are on the other end of Chrome Avenue, where Four Corners is.
Yeah.
Miami and 41 and Chrome Avenue, and it's going to take at least a half hour better before they get to even where this guy's at. But by that time, a spotter has already picked him up. You just drive till you get out of sight of that guy, put the car in park right in the middle of the road, get out, get in a spotter's car, and drive home.
Yeah.
And then let him have it. But
man, that's crazy. So when you talk about that much going, right, they confiscate that much of it. So what happens with whoever has all that weed or marijuana, right? Uh-huh. What happens with that? Hey man, sorry, I just lost. How much money would it cost to replace that?
That's an excellent question.
Okay.
Brilliant question.
Thank you.
Actually, because what I was about to say was, is going to nail that right on the head, But when you're talking about, a truck or a car or whatever, you're losing a few pieces, things like that. There was never any worry in that. It never became an issue. At least as a kid, in anything that I ever got involved with, that was never an issue. A proper count on the vessel, when they're being loaded or unloaded and stuff like that, it's advantageous a lot of times to be doing that, particularly if you don't. I've only ever worked with 2 people in Miami. I only want to know Carlito and Leo. They're my connection. They're my Cuban connection in Miami. Anybody in Miami, and those cocaine cowboys, they want to buy a load of weed and make some money, whatever like that. That's fine. You go to Carlito and Leo, they'll come to me. I don't want to know anybody else. I don't want to know anybody but you two. I'll go anywhere in the Caribbean because I've inherited these connections, or we've had these as I was growing up, these connections all around the Caribbean. They were family and generational as well. There were no cartels involved in what we were doing. There were only maybe 3 cartels at that time, at all, between Mexico and South America.
Which was who? Is that Noriega?
Well, Noriega was part. He was playing the game with everybody else at that time.
Okay.
He wasn't interfering at all.
Yeah.
He was, if anything, a safe haven for a while.
Okay.
But
because he didn't deal in marijuana, right?
Well, I have a story about him. I moved 3 boatloads for him. But that's a whole. That we can do another time, maybe, or something like that. But what winds up happening is Central America had the Sinaloa, and then you had what was the guy's name? I forget. Was it Gallardo, somebody or other, who ran the entire Mexican whatever it was going on at that time. They became the Gulf Cartel ultimately. But the Sinaloa, there's nothing new about them. They've been around forever. And there's the Medellin and the Cali Cartel in Colombia, and everybody associated with them. And the people there weren't many fringe cartels in Colombia, only in Mexico. When the paradigm shift started to take place, and that's when more and more confiscated cocaine was being confiscated in Miami, and they shut down the cocaine cowboys, if you will, and and that sort of thing. And that's what sort of precipitated the upcoming of these other cartels in Mexico. But in our day, there was only maybe 3 or 4 at that time, but we weren't dealing with them.
Yeah.
Like I said, families and generationals like we were, and that sort of thing, which was made it easier to do. Which is why in all the time I ever did, I only saw a gun once. The only gun that I ever saw was in Leo, my partner in Miami, Carlito's buddy, Carlito and Leo Martinez. He dressed like Tom Selleck, Magnum PI. He had a flowered Hawaiian shirt on, but he always had that pistol stuck in his belt. That's the only gun I ever saw in all the years of doing this. And people talk about violence. Were you scared? Is it? No. What about if you lost their stuff? Now comes your question. Well, it's ridiculous. It was ridiculous to think of any violence at that level. And here's why. And I'll run the numbers quickly for y'all. based on what I knew when I took over as a kid, when a couple operations Everglades happened and all the adults were taken and everybody was gone, they didn't know the infrastructure were the kids. We were still there. The work could still continue had they had somebody to jump up and continue that work. Well, I did that, and a couple other people did too as well. Well, I was buying this stuff in Jamaica for $8 a pound. Buying it everywhere else in the Caribbean, in Colombia and Central America for $10 a pound. So let's go with a $10 number of Colombian redbud. If I took $300,000 of some cocaine cowboy's money in Miami, and I could go to Colombia and buy 30,000 pounds of Colombian redbud, 15 tons, for $300,000. Now, by the time I get that 15 tons, that 30,000 pounds of Colombian red that I paid $10 a pound for, that $300,000 of stuff, when I get it into United States territorial waters, it now becomes worth anywhere from $500 to $750 a pound. So if we go with a $500 number, I just turned this cocaine cowboy dumbass's money, $300,000 into $15 million in 8 days. That's how long it takes, barring any unforeseen weather patterns coming through the Caribbean. That's how long it takes to get loaded and get back to Southwest Florida. So you just made $15 million in 8 days off of $300,000, minus my fee for a load that size, which is about $5 million. And I'll pay my crew and everybody that worked, and I keep what's left over. You just made $10 million, plus you made your $300,000 back. So that being said, do the math a little bit further. Take that $300,000 initial investment. Forget you got it back. Take it out of that $10 million that I just made you. Take $300,000 and divide it back into $9,700,000, and you come up with a number 32. What that number represents is how many chances I have to get your next load in before you lose money. I can lose 31 of your next loads.
Yeah.
I'll get the 32nd one in for you, and you still made money. You haven't lost money.
Sure.
And that's the ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that's
of
a part of the business. Till if that happens, what is a truckload of marijuana? What's the value?
It depends.
750,000 maybe.
I can tell you that the bales average about 33,000 a piece.
Okay.
So if you got 10 of them, you got $3.3 million. You got 100 of them, you got $3.3 million.
Yeah.
That's just 100 pieces,
I mean, you're not fitting 100 pieces in the back of a truck.
No. But
you're fitting, what, 16, 18 of those?
You could put, let's say in a van, you could probably get maybe 25 or 30 bales in a van.
Okay.
You could probably get 15 or 20 in a pickup truck with a capper on it. You can get 11 in a car if you take the back seat out and fill the trunk in the back seat, and then one riding shotgun with you up front.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Each one of those vehicles being used isn't being counted as far as how many bales are going into it. There's a set rate. For every boat that comes out to take our load from us at night to bring it into the houses, that's $40,000 a boat a night. There's 2 people on the boat. Captain makes half. He pays his mate $20,000. He gets half of it. The vehicles, $40,000 a piece. No matter how many, every time you make a trip, if you make 2 a day, that vehicle owner made $80,000, half of which goes to the driver. The driver can make as much as $40,000 a day just driving to Miami and driving home empty, that sort of thing. But going back to the original amounts of money, now, and when we talk about, any reprisal for having lost anything like that, if I should happen to lose one, which I never did, it was just a matter of go back and get another one, It's that simple. It's that ridiculously stupid.
Yeah, you're almost happy to get rid of some cash because you got so much at that point. I mean, what do you do with...
Yeah, and that was...
But what do you do with all this money?
And that's another thing.
You're not going to make a deposit for $5 million into a bank.
That's another interesting thing about it all too, is that people don't even stop to consider, the money part of it.
Yeah, they worry about what they lost versus what they've gained.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's not even an issue for us. It's not even a thought. It's like, who cares?
Yeah.
Don't sweat it. But, that being said, there's always, since I was a kid, there was always been a bit of a a bit of a buffer, if you will, for lack of a better way of putting it, whereby whoever is the purchaser of the load, see, even Carlito and Leo, I don't care whose it is. You give me the money and I'll go do my thing. I'll give it to you. You give it to them. I'll work through you people. But I always insisted that whoever's shit it's going to be, send me one person, one guy that'll go on my boat with my crew to Jamaica, to Central America, to South America, ride along with the crew, do a count as they come on board with my guy, match counts, and he rides with it. If anything happens to that load along the way, he's going with it.
Yeah.
And he's going to be able to tell whoever owns that fucking load exactly what happened to it. So that's a little bit of a safety valve as well. But the numbers didn't matter, really. Yeah. But, a count is necessary. It's a business, purely a business. Because any aspect of the importation part of it that I can eliminate, say if I didn't have to use a guy's house, I could just take it right from the boats and put it into a truck or something like that. That's money for me. I don't have to pay them. So I keep that. So it's, like I said, it's a business. But having said that, when I bring your load in, say I bring you 20 tons or whatever, say you owe me, just pick a number, you owe me $15 million, let's just say. I don't get paid the minute I get your load to you in Miami. It's not like I give you your shit and you give me my money and I go home. It doesn't work like that. How it works is I send your stuff to Miami. If you owe me $15 million, I'll send you all of your stuff to Miami. I'll keep now what's worth $15 million. Because now it's not worth 10 anymore. It's worth 500 at the least. So I'll keep an equivalent amount of my pay, stash it at somebody's house.
Okay.
And when you come up with $5-10 million, I'll release $5-10 million of your stuff to you. Because if you lose that load anywhere in Miami, somebody down your chain screws up, all I have to do is make one call. I'm selling this shit. My crew gets paid. So I'm always guaranteed to get paid because I'm holding your stuff.
Yeah, versus giving them the whole thing and they say, hey, sorry, Tim.
Oh, we lost. Yeah. So now if you got a problem with that, then you get somebody else to move your shit for you.
Yeah, so now you're not making as much as you would have, but you still have enough to recover your costs.
No, I'm making my total amount.
Times over.
If they lose it, I still got my pay in cash.
Yeah, but you're not getting paid up front.
Well, no, never do.
Yeah, so, but you still have enough to recover your investment times.
Yeah. And the only investment I've got into it is my life and all my crew's life and all our asses are hanging out in the wind.
When you think about all the money that went through and how much money you would have had in your lifetime doing this shit, right? All the people, right, involved. You had 60-plus people, hundreds of people. It got bigger and bigger, right?
Well, each crew, there's 5 crews. We're talking about, a couple hundred people on each crew.
So you think of that many people doing that well, and it reminds me of a scene in Goodfellas. Did you ever see the movie Goodfellas?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Robert De Niro says, don't go out and buy flashy things because it'll make us look like we're doing something wrong, right? I remember the guy comes in with his wife. She's got the mink coat on.
Yep.
They walk in. They pull up at a pink Cadillac, and he smacks the guy in the head, and he says, "Hey, man, what are you doing? Give me that coat." And he takes her coat off. They take
that was an atypical scenario.
That would happen.
Denzel Washington in American Gangster did the same thing with a what was that thing? A mink? It wasn't a minx. It was a some kind of fur coat or whatever. But he threw it in the fireplace and burned it. Yeah, because it made him stick out. And that's another great segue, because what was important for the adults in the early years for us kids was to make us understand unequivocally that you didn't get stupid. You didn't start buying Porsches and dumbass stuff that made you stick out, because quite frankly you just didn't work anymore, dude, because now you're a liability. You're no longer an asset.
And now that's one to worry about, because if they go, they start talking, and that could blow up the whole operation.
We had, it was really a remarkable thing as far as the story goes about, I said earlier, keeping a relative secret like that for generations, and that had a lot to do with it, teaching the younger version of themselves to how to not be stupid, because when you did, you were done, and they taught us different ways about how to spend money and to not have anything to show for it. That was the key.
That's got to be a hard thing, because you have you had so much, and you almost had to live like you had nothing. But where do you put it? What do you do with it? How do you spend it? I mean, it almost became a liability, I would think, in a sense.
Yeah, you don't accumulate things. You have stuff. This is really hard to describe, to help people think in these large numbers, these large terms, that you could buy, once we're, I guess, Naples in those days was an overly huge town. I can remember Bonita Beach Road was still a dirt road down to the beach, at that time, and what the adults did was, they showed you ways of spending money, and then you would make friends. Like I had friends that owned all the Nissan dealerships. They also owned Moss Marine, and their father owned still does own all the gambling boats. I could go to these guys, in any one of the dealerships or whatnot, and say, look, I want to buy this, I want to buy that. I bought an $89,000 boat, Chris Craft, from them at Moss Marine. And I was able to do that in such a way that they knew, even in the clubs in Naples, knew when the guys from Everglades came to town. I could buy a car, and they knew that if the car was over $10,000, to not deposit any more than $9,900 each day until the car is paid for. When I bought that nearly $90,000 boat, I gave them $140,000 in cash at the marina, and they knew to deposit just under $10,000 each day until that boat was paid for. That's got me out of having to fill out a CTR, a cash transaction receipt, which goes right to the IRS. So anything spent over $10,000, you have to claim it. You have to report it. So if I spend just under that, and these guys knew that, they'll spend my money for me in that way, but the boat only cost $90,000. I give you $140,000. Spread it amongst the rest of your crew, the other salesmen. Now give everybody a piece of it, for doing this for me, and you had people that would do that for you.
It's almost like Breaking Bad. You ever see Breaking Bad?
I never did.
Yeah, so he wants to show his wife how much money that they have, and he took her to a private place with cash stacked up, as tall as he was, and she thought, man, what are we going to do with this? But it would be almost a liability in a sense because you can't do nothing with it. Have you ever had like any IRS audits throughout that time?
No, never had any problems like that. Because, we lived okay. A lot of us could, you just learn how to live beyond your means visibly.
A lot.
And you're on a little island, such as Chokoloskee, and it's only 139 acres, which isn't big at all. And stone crabbing is a rather lucrative business to be in the first place. It's seasonal, October to May, then you have the summer off, but during those months, I could make as much as $2,500 a week if we were catching good. Plus, I'm making, a daily wage was only like $5.60 or something at that time, but I'm making a percentage on the catch. So I could live decent. I had a Corvette that I bought from Bob Taylor's son.
And nobody looked at that and said he's...
No, because I put down just enough cash to ruffle, and then I took a loan out for the balance. Just paid the loan off. So we could own certain things. And if you drive across the island and you see these, atypical trailers, there's another trailer, nothing, spectacular about them in any fashion. There, you might see a brand new pickup truck or my Corvette or something, but we were stone crabbies. We earned that. Where the difference was made is when you walk in the trailer. And you see that plush Berber carpet and all the leather furniture and all the latest appliances and all the, the high-tech, stereo crap and doodads and that sort of thing in the trailer.
It's like a fast car with all the
it's a sleeper.
Yeah, it's a sleeper car.
Exactly.
Pull up to a stoplight and it's nothing. It don't look like anything, but
But that was a way of them, teaching us that, and it worked because if you wanted to work, you just show up and did your thing.
One of the things I think of, being in real estate is that you see you have these houses, right? They're stacked floor to ceiling with either money or marijuana, right? Hurricane seasons come. There had to be a little bit of scare when you start filling these houses up and all of a sudden you're in the middle of a hurricane or something, or, even today, like the surges and things that could happen.
Right.
Could you imagine what would happen if you got a 2-foot surge in a house out there with, $5 million worth of marijuana stacked from ceiling to...
Oh, yeah. Or, you know.
Because I don't know if they got a surge
$100
out.
million worth of. Oh yeah,
I don't think that they have. But have you ever had any scares? Was there any scares?
Well, not during storms, because all that's taken into consideration. You know, the NOAA Weather Service was available. You know, on VHF, you can monitor that sort of thing, and you know, you just halted what was going on.
Yeah,
you just stopped.
Roof comes off.
If a boat was en route and a storm was coming, a boat would just pull into Belize or it'd pull into Panama or some shit and just wait it out. You know, we wouldn't risk, you know, going out there in the storm. I like that, but typically and ideally, stormy weather is the perfect time to work.
Yeah,
because you know
everybody's inside.
Nobody's going to be out there.
That's right. Yeah,
but you.
One of the things I happen to think of is if you had a place stacked with cash, because you would fill houses with cash too, right?
Mm-hmm. Only the pay house.
Okay.
When I was getting paid.
Okay, got it. So I was thinking, roof comes off, you know.
Yeah.
That could be a problem. You shower the town with cash, right?
Yeah. No,
That'd be an easy way to get caught right there. That's for sure.
It was kept better. It was better controlled in that way. Now you have to understand also that money laundering didn't become illegal until 1986.
What were your years?
There was no laws for that.
What was the years again from when you started?
79 to 88.
Okay.
10 years of, you know, 4 years or so of the late 1984 of being a crewman and, you know, learning the ropes in that way. And then the end of 1984 to 1988 running, you know, whenever I had a chance to, any one of the 5 crews, if not all 5 Southwest Florida crews.
Man.
There was one in Everglades, was one I grew up with. There was the Goodland crew, Marco Island crew, Naples crew, and Pine Island crew. So there are 5 crews. I mean, everybody in Southwest Florida, it seemed like in those days, was moving bales around.
Yeah.
Somewhere on the fringe of that industry going on, because, I mean, it was... Chokoloskee was also described as being, in Everglades City, being the most corrupt small town in North America.
Wow.
But it was also the marijuana smuggling hub of North America as well.
Yeah.
And that, you know, and like I said, if I did or I didn't earlier, you know, when I'm tagged with, you know, 30 million, 60 million or whatever like that, a lot of that is when I was growing up, you know, because I was, you know, we were moving, that's just, like I said, ridiculous, 400,000 pounds a week at one point. You know, when I got arrested in 1988, October actually of 1988, the Naples Daily News reported on it, and what they came up with was this. This is actually kind of funny.
Gotta love the yellow newspaper.
I just managed to keep, I don't know how I managed to keep a hold of these things, but this is the front page of the Naples Daily News.
Wow.
It was October 19th, 1988, area part of a U.S. pot dragnet. Agents say 38 helped import over 150 tons. Now, what they didn't understand at that time was that nearly 400,000 pounds was only a week's work. This is Mikey Patton, Jerry Foreman, a couple of the crew guys, and John D.C., U.S. Customs Supervisor, who was escorting them to the jail in Fort Myers, the federal building.
Gotta love the old yellow newspaper.
Oh, yeah. You know, there's a story behind that one as well. But that was, like I said, was telling you earlier, when they changed the federal sentencing guidelines, they had done 2 federal operations prior to Operation Peacemaker. That's what the operation they captured me and, you know, all the rest of the kids that were, you know, left over. Operation Everglades happened in 1983, and then Operation Everglades 2, which happened almost a year to the day, 1984, simply because the older generations had senators, congressmen, judges, you know, people they could depend on to tell them about what was going on. And they knew several weeks before this operation took place that they were coming. So when they showed up, nobody was home. I mean, it's truly an embarrassing moment for our United States government. But here they come again, you know, the following year. Like I said, and this time their connections told them, look, they're not going to give up. So you might as well just, you know, let it happen.
So there's so much in here. I mean, like I said, I followed it. I've read it. I've listened to it. I've done everything with it. So people haven't heard the story. It's a crazy story. There's a lot more to it. So you got to read the story. But take me to the end of it. How did you get arrested? What was the first sign that they had that you guys were doing this?
Right. Well, when the United States government did their second operation in Everglades, Operation Everglades 2, they called it. That's when, like I said, everybody stayed in town. Anybody that was under suspicion of any kind. They had no idea the significance of what was taking place, and they had no idea that over half the town was involved in it.
Did you know that this was taking place?
Well, at the time, yeah, but us kids, we were working on the kind of the, out of sight sort of an arena in this whole affair. Like I said, nobody knew it was us kids. We were the engine, because if you think the adults are out there every night moving 800 to 1,000 800-pound bales every night. No, you're wrong. The kids are doing that. They're going, move that. This
They're
kind of stuff.
catching the guys that are collecting.
Yeah.
The two end pieces, right?
It took a man and his wife, 2.5 years of living in Everglades to come up with just enough to get who they got. But they still didn't have an idea of the magnitude to which this was all taking place. That being said, once they took these people out of the picture in 1984, there were more reporting agencies on the island than there were people being arrested. It was kind of a Keystone Cops sort of an affair. It was a bit hilarious. They had the road blocked and everything. But one of the reporting agencies was Life magazine.
Okay.
This is the cover of that year's Life magazine. This is in June 1980. What's it say? Yeah. June 1984. Now, what they did is unprecedented. Even today, for Life magazine, this is an unprecedented article because it quite simply, I can find the center of the darn book right here. The centerfold picture is an overview of the 10,000 islands, and it says on top, "Trouble in Everglades City." And just under that, it says a South Florida town is tarred with drug smuggling, and many of its, well, they got the population wrong, but it's irrelevant. Many of its 600 residents say, "So what?" And it goes on for an unprecedented 18 pages. Life magazine has never done anything quite like that since. And once that happened, and everybody started, dropping off and going to prison and such, that's when I, kind of stumbled and fell into and the reason it happened, quite simply, was it had to do solely with one particular day in which none of the other people in Southwest Florida, bail handlers, drivers, captains, anybody like that, ever met any of the Cuban counterparts in Miami. Only several of the adults from Everglades dealt with these people firsthand. There was no reason for anybody to know them. I never knew. Nobody ever knew. Because we were doing the dead drop part of it.
Yeah.
When we did that 55 tons that one night, 3 days, we worked 3 days. The last night we worked was with that 55 tons and that crew.
Yeah.
I came out that next morning and went over to one of the houses just to see how things were going on. And one of the five brothers who was running the whole show at that time, I grew up with their kids. That's how we became the third generation. He said, "Timmy, come here." He saw me. "Timmy, come here." He says, "I want to ask you a favor." And I'm going, "Oh, no." I'm thinking in my head, "Oh, no, there's no way, But prior to our last 3-day run, last time we had a break, the same individual that I'm speaking of had given myself and a friend of mine a chainsaw and a wrecking bar, and he pointed at his brand new Winnebago, 35 or 40 foot. I mean, it was a monster. And he said, "I want you to go into this thing and strip out everything from the windows down. Leave the cabinets and the curtains and all that stuff, but tear it out, the plumbing, the cabinets, the walls. We even took the captain's chairs out, the passenger and the driver's seat, threw them out the door. And they put airbags in the springs on all four corners of this thing and pumped them full. And that put 11,500 pounds of bales in this thing so it wouldn't spark the highway on the way to Miami. It would sit staunch like this. So when you looked at it, you saw the cabinets and the curtains and stuff like that. But if you walked up and looked inside there, like this, it was bales all the way across to the other window, right?
Yeah.
So Daryl goes, "Timmy, come here. I want to ask you something." He asked me if I would drive this thing to Miami for him, and I went, "Oh shit!" And he's, I just made $75,000. I don't need to drive this damn thing, but because of who was asking me, I said, okay. And he said, the reason I'm asking you is because it can't go to the spot where, the plaza where everybody else is going. It has to go straight to their spot, their house, their stash house. Now I'm getting these ribbings from all these other guys that, people have been killed in that house. I'm hearing all this stupid shit. They're just trying to freak me out, right? Because nobody's ever been there, just the adults. So couldn't take this Winnebago with 11,500 pounds of bales in it to a plaza and park it, because if you get within 40 feet of it, you could smell it. So it had to go straight to that house. And I said, he said, I'll give you $35,000 just for the one-way trip. And I said, I was thinking in my head, it wasn't about the money. It was about, this is the shore cruise job. My job's offshore where I got a chase boat I can get off and get, I felt good about that. I always only done that.
You didn't want to be involved. You just wanted to be the service.
My
service
part
department.
of it, what I thought was done.
Yeah.
But having been who it was that asked me, I relented. Yeah, sure, okay, whatever. So when I got in this thing, I literally had to pull a bale out, throw it out the door so I could sit down in between them and drive this thing, because there were no seats. We took the seats out of it. So 120-mile trip. I drive this thing down to the Four Corners, Dade Corners. I turn on Chrome Avenue. I'm headed toward Homestead, and they're guiding me on the radio. Turn down this road and into this orange grove, and out pops this damn house that has no business in the world being there. It looked like a Austrian castle, with the spires and the thing. Like there's some cocaine cowboy had the money to build this ridiculous house, and he built it just because he wanted it, right? I pulled in there and pulled up next to the house, and I no sooner got out, they started to open the doors, and they were throwing this stuff under the house, right? So I was told to stay there all day till the load stopped coming, and then they would give me a car to drive back that had money in it. So I just stayed there all day, and I got to meet the guys, and, bullshitting with them and stuff all day long. They're playing poker, and they're drinking, and I'm staying straight because I got to drive, and I get the car, and I drive back home, and long story short, Operation Everglades 2 happens. They take everybody, and they go to jail. Now there's no work going on for like 2 months or better. And I get a knock on my door. I have a house in Golden Gate. And I get a knock on my door one day. Here's this guy, Jorge, from the house I was just at, and I had been at. And wondering,
in Miami.
In Miami. The only few people knew who these guys were.
Yeah.
And here's this.
And not many people knew where you lived, I'm sure.
But it took them a month to find me. They knew Timmy was my name. They knew I was from Everglades and, around in that area. But again, and
you couldn't just get on Google and find out where you lived, right?
Well, no, yeah. In the early 80s, like I said, Naples wasn't that big. Yeah. Golden Gate either, and Everglades certainly was not, any place significant, to say the least. But took them a month. They finally found me, knocked on my door. Timmy, this guy George goes, we got work to do, man. Can you do this? And I didn't even hesitate. I said, oh, hell yes. I didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
I knew how it all worked, at that point. But what I didn't know, and I had to find out, was the adults end of it. Where do I go? Who do I talk to? How much do I buy it for? The whole shtick from our end of it to the house to Miami, what happened prior to that? I didn't know. I was guided to a little old man in Goodland who hooked me up with those connections that he had all around the Caribbean.
Yeah. With
a single sideband radio. He would talk to him over the radio and expect to see so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. That's how I wound up tripping over, just having driven that van, that Winnebago to Miami. Who knew? Next thing you know, they'd be knocking on the door wanting the work to go again. So I went back and got everybody back to work again.
Man.
I was told how much to charge. $145 a pound if they brought their own boat loaded. I would unload your boat and put it in, bring it to shore.
Was your crew still involved?
Oh, yeah. Everybody was.
The captain of the boat, your whole crew?
Well, no. Crews had changed over by that time. So now the next generation, the older guys, they either went to prison or they just stepped back into the shadows and, they let their 3 years of, passed before, indictments could be.
Yeah.
That's.
So this is you at this point. This is your crew.
This is now Timmy's mine and
crew.
whoever has the ability to use the crew to run the crew. But I did a lot of work. I did a lot of work with my own crew and the other crews, in Southwest Florida, which is why the ridiculous amounts they got me with almost 400,000 pounds. Like I said, they didn't understand the infrastructure. They didn't understand how large this was. So the last job that I was involved in was they called it the Pine Island Dump. Made the headlines, newspapers again, Pine Island Dump. It was 47,000 pounds coming from Colombia. My boats had it offshore, and I was splitting the load, half going to Everglades and half going into Pine Island, which wasn't uncommon either. So I'm up at the Pine Island crew because I've not worked with them a whole lot. I knew the Everglades guys. I didn't worry about them because I had partners that were, dealing with that. So I'm up there working with the Pine Island crew, and the load's coming in, and we're out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, where nobody goes on Pine Island at that time, in those days. And we're bound this little grass growing up, and this has-been type of road onto a dock that's falling apart. And we got a box truck backed in there, and now the boats are starting to show up, and they're loading the box truck full of bales. And we get it about maybe a third full, something like that, and the boat stopped coming. And the chatter on the radio stopped. And I gave it about another 10 minutes, and I'm not saying anything. And all of a sudden, my spotter, my guy that's out by the road, gets on the radio, and he goes, "Hey, man, a car just pulled in here with its lights on and backed out and went back toward town." And I'm thinking to myself, damn, nobody knows. I mean, that's not right.
Yeah. Did you know at that point?
I kind of had a feeling because I walked out to the road where he was, where he would come in from. And I said, "Now tell me again what happened." Well, he's telling me everybody that was back at the dock with me, standing right behind me because they kind of know something's going wrong because there's no boats, there's no more bales coming, nobody's talking. And while he's telling me again about this car, I can hear the tire noise of all these cars coming down the road, and there's a row of trees, so I couldn't see them. It's not like it was a blank field and you could see them way up coming down the road. The minute I saw headlights from the trees that were obscuring the cars, hit it, everybody starts running like they turn the light on, a bunch of cockroaches split. Well, if you're facing the road, if you ran to the left, you're in a pine tree forest and you're gone. You just run your butt off. But if you go this way, there's about 3 acres of palmettos. You know how big palmettos are.
Yeah.
And before you even get
You're
to
not
the woods.
through that.
No. So I don't know what happened. Everybody took off this way, and it wasn't ever uncommon to have a passenger come in on a boat, like a guy from Colombia or Cuba or, that was in Jamaica or someplace like that. They'd come in and just go wherever. Well, a Colombian had come ashore. They brought this guy in, and he doesn't know. He went the same way I did. He's crunching and crashing through the palmettos, and when those cars came, I knew we were there in a couple of seconds. Turning in, and all I could do was squat down. I didn't even sit. I was squatted on my knees like this, not making a sound. And I'm hearing this guy crunch, crunch, crash, crash. And I'm thinking, God bless it, man, stop. Otherwise, if they start running after him, they're going to run right over me. So all of a sudden I don't hear him anymore. And I'm thinking, oh, like this. But I'm still crunched down. And I can see. I'm close enough to where I can see when the guy is a tan Bronco. When he opened the door, I could see the bottom of the door and the light came on. I see his feet hit the ground and he stepped out. I'm that close. And all of a sudden I can hear the guys out in the road going, "There's some guys running over there. They're running over there. They're running." And then we had them running everywhere, right? So the guy in the Bronco, he backs out and he takes off. And I'm sitting there, and every time somebody would make a noise or something, I would try to move my feet out from under me, and because the palmettos are crunching under my feet. I would get my legs up so they're starting to go numb. Because if I got to run, I'm not going anywhere because I can't feel my legs, right? So every time a door closed or somebody yelled or something like that, I would take that opportunity to, get myself ready to go when I could. Well, here I'm sitting, and we're getting closer to dawn,
How long are you there at this point?
Oh, I was in there maybe hour and a half, because it was getting late. I mean, we should have been loaded in that truck out of there, hours ago.
Yeah.
But all this is, taking place. So I'm sitting there, and like I said, the Bronco goes out, and he comes, goes down the road, but then he wasn't 5 minutes even. He comes back, and he pulls in, and I hear another car pull out, and I'm hearing all this, but I'm not seeing it. Another car, because the main road is like 30 feet this way. The dirt road we were using is 8-10 feet this way, so there's a car in front of me, and there's a Bronco like this, and the guy gets out of the Bronco, and he closes the door, and I see his feet walk around the front of the vehicle. And whoever was in that car out in the street goes, "Where are you going?" And the guy in the Bronco goes, "Well, I'm going to walk back in there and see what we got." And the guy goes, "Hang on, I'll go with you." So I'm thinking, this is it. Because the sun's coming up, dude. I got no more time. And I'm thinking to myself, it's still running, the vehicle. I can hear it. But I don't know if he was the only one in it. So I'm thinking, if I put my head up and look, if there's somebody in there, they're going to see me. One of two things is going to happen.
Yeah.
Either this guy is going to shoot me, or I'm going to run him over and knock him the hell out as best I can and run, So I took my chance, and I looked over like that. There was nobody in that car, dude. I stood up and like a shot out of a rocket, man. I went across the road and through the bushes, and I ran until I couldn't breathe anymore. And I dove under a bunch of bushes, and I covered myself up with leaves and sticks and twigs and shit up to my face like this, and I laid there. I laid there all day. When the sun came up, I laid there all day listening to the helicopter, listening to the cars, and listening to them tow my box truck out of the woods, bang, bang, through the trees, limbs and shit. I'm hearing all this taking place. And so later on that afternoon, I don't know what time it was, and I had this very watch. I still have this very watch. I'm looking at it, and it's getting to be like 2, 3 in the afternoon, and I've been up all night, obviously, and I got this shit, stayed covered. So I got up, and I had to take a crap really bad. And this is a Guinness Book of World Record crap, because it took me I had a pocket full of $100 bills, and it took me about $700 to wipe my ass. I just left it there. I climbed back under there, and I cover up, and I'm laying there, and I'm almost going to sleep, and I hear branches and leaves crackling. And I open my eye like this, and I look, and there's a damn bobcat. This thing had to be 80 pounds. I mean, it was a big mommy. If it was, if it was 2 pounds, it was 80. About 3 steps away from me, down like this, doing this real slow, creeping up on me, because it could see my eyes once I opened my eyes, and it stopped. Couldn't see my whole body. All it saw was my eyeballs moving. And then I'm laying there thinking, now comes my inner monologue, thinking, I just ran my ass off to get away from the cops and all these people, trying to shoot at me. Now I'm going to get my ass all tore off by this thing. I'm thinking, no way this is going to happen,
because
right?
if you're little, he's gonna think he's a lot bigger than you are, right?
Oh, yeah.
You stand up, that might be a different story.
Yeah, well, then I'm thinking to myself, what do I do now? And it was just an impulsive sort of knee-jerk type of reaction. I just come flying out of them bushes and them leaves, and I went, "Wah!" like that, and that thing jumped in the air, did like 3 flips, and took off like it was shot out of a cannon. Funniest damn thing I ever saw. And I laid there, and I'm just, trying to get over this stuff, and I'm not hearing any more going on out here. So I waited till just after dark, and I made my way back out next to the road. But there was a fish house about 2 miles down the road where we came from. We passed it on the way out. So I'm thinking I'll walk down to that fish house. But I'm walking about 40 feet, maybe 20 yards off the side of the road through the woods, parallel on the road. I'm not walking out on the damn road. So I make my way, I don't know how long it was. It's like 2:30 in the morning now. And I make my way to the fish house. Nobody's there. There's people in the fish house because I see the lights are on and stuff, and I can hear, what's going on. And there's lights in the parking lot, and there's a phone booth. This is before cell phones, people. There's a phone booth in this parking lot, lit up right in the middle of nowhere. And I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to get to that phone booth? When I'm the only one out there, and it's 2:30 in the morning, and there's people in there right now, and they're going to wonder where in the hell I came from. And just that same moment, pulls in a shrimp boat. And they unload, and the crew gets off the boat. Now they're lined up at the phone booth calling for their rides home. So I'm just picking this stuff off me this whole time, all this crud from all the day long, and cleaning myself up. I just kind of eased on down there and got in line with all the rest of the crew. And when it came my turn in the phone booth, I turned to taxi cabs in the phone booth, and I called the first one I saw. And it sounded like the guy just was in bed or some stuff, whatever. And I said, told him where I was at. I said, I just got done fishing, man. I said, I need a ride. I want to ride home now. I said, I can't wait. And I didn't even look where he was coming from. He wasn't even close to me. And he said, do you realize where I'm at? I said, I don't care where you are. I said, you show up, I'll give you $500 cash plus your fare if you show up. And he said, you're not kidding about that $500, are you? I said, no, show up. And while I'm talking to him, in comes a sheriff's cruiser into the parking lot, driving slow, and it goes around the back of me like this, and I'm watching, I'm talking to the guy in the cab. You're coming, right? And he pulls out on the road and goes off. And I said, just show up. I got you covered. And I hung the phone up. Next guy's turn. So I sit there waiting. 40 minutes later, her taxi shows up. I threw $500 over the seat into his lap, and he got down in the back seat and laid down like this. And I said, take me somewhere, into Punta Gorda or someplace, and drop me off at a hotel. I don't care which one.
Yeah.
And I got out of there, man. I got to the hotel, and I slept my ass off. And I called a buddy the next day to come and get me. But that was the beginning. And even though they didn't catch one of us, they caught my buddy Mark and his brother-in-law because they knew where we parked the van at the hotel. And in retrospect, I'm thinking that Bronco that I was watching under the bushes, it was driving through that hotel parking lot before while we were getting into our vehicle for the driver to drive us out and drop us off because we weren't leaving a vehicle out there. And here's this clunk nut in this Bronco, and I'm thinking to myself, and I even said out loud, this stupid Yankee doesn't even know where he's going. I said it out loud. Turns out that's the damn Bronco that had the resident field agent for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. He was in charge of Operation Peacemaker. He was the head of the whole freaking deal. He is the guy driving around the hotel. He's the guy I saw getting out of his car. So I wrote about him in the book, But a strange sequence of events that took place, And then when my buddy Mark and his brother-in-law made their way back to the hotel where we parked our van. We came up all together in his van, my buddy and his brother-in-law and me. Well, I'm sitting in the back. Well, when they show back up to the motel, there's FDLE sitting there. They know he come out of that van, but they can't put him at the scene of the crime because everybody ran. They didn't see anybody. Yeah. So all they could do was question him and this and that, and they let him go. But they searched the van in the meantime. Whose wallet and checkbook's in the back? Mine. Next thing you know, I get this doc, and here comes the investigation. They come out, they're talking, do you know this person? You know this person? Well, yeah, I know Mark, because your stuff was in the back. Well, yeah, he's my best friend. Why wouldn't it be in there? I drive with him all the time. Maybe I left it there, pulling that little scenario. But none of it was going to fly. They had too much visual evidence on us, and the reason they did simply was because at that time there was an individual, I won't name any names, I'm going to remain a bit respectful with that point, even though it was detrimental to every one of us. And what happened was they had caught this individual, and he was caught in Colombia doing a cocaine deal. And when guys aren't working or hauling or whatever like that, nobody cares what you're doing, But he got himself in trouble and got put in prison, and the U.S. government, through their connections, the agency, foreign agency, found out who he was and where he come from. Agents went down there and said, look, we'll get you out of here. Here's what we need you to do for us. So they brought him back, and he went right back into the crew working because nobody knew where he was, and we cared. It was time to work. Come on, we called him. It's time to work. So they put him back. We put him back to work, and he was already working with the. So, long story short, from that point up to the ending, if you will, wound up getting a couple of the younger guys. Because when I was doing my thing, as I got older, I was running 20-year-olds, 19-year-olds, running boats through the islands, because that's how us kids were learned. And you get a couple of those guys, and you tell them now the sentencings have changed. Your dads and your fathers and your uncles and people like that, they all got maybe 4 years, maybe 3, maybe 2 for all of the shit they got involved in. The 5 brothers, Daniel's brothers, being arraigned in Miami for their crimes and sentenced. The judge is reading back their list of seizures. a Netherlands Antilles holding company worth somewhere between $5 or $10 million, properties all over the Caribbean. In the United States, they had timeshares, houses, motels, hotels, properties, boats, cars, trucks, buses, airplanes. Daryl had an airplane, a Cessna, that he didn't have a license to fly. He just had the money to buy it and the money to have a guy show him how to fly the damn thing.
Yeah.
But they also, as he's reading these seizures, they also seized 580,000 pounds of Colombian weed. Now, who has 500,000 pounds laying around? Well, we do. These guys do. So the judge is sitting there, and the 5 brothers, the youngest of the 5 is Craig. This is his second time. The judge pointed that out to him. He says, yes, sir, I understand, my second time. And he addresses them all in one. And he says, he's flipping through page, and he goes, gentlemen, he says, I have absolutely no idea how to sentence people like you. He says, I've never come across anybody quite like you. And this is a United States magistrate in Miami telling them this. And he's going through his stuff, and he looks at Craig again, and he says, okay, Mr. Daniels, once again, you realize this is your second time for this type of an offense. So the other 4 brothers, 36 months. 2.5 years or 3 years or whatever that is. That's nothing. With all that, they listed as seizures from these guys. The only guidelines that provided for them, that's why he said he doesn't know how to sentence, because there are no guidelines for people like you. He can only give them what the guidelines said to give them. So they're like, okay. So he gets to Craig's second time. He knows he's not getting what these guys are getting. He's getting something different. And the judge says once again, Mr. Daniels, he says, I'm at a loss. I don't know. I have no idea how to sentence you. He says, and he looks him straight in the eye, and Craig's telling me this himself as I'm writing it for the book, and I'm reading transcripts from their sentencing. The judge looks him in the eye and literally asks him, does 5 years sound like a long time to you? Craig goes, yes, sir, that sounds like a hell of a long time. 5 years he gave him, that was it. So this was the significance of what the government could do. Well, now that when they realized they didn't stop it, they said, okay, hold on. We got to change up the way we do business here. So that's why on September 1st, 1987, the federal sentencing guidelines changed now to mandatory minimums. These are what I talked about earlier, the 40 years to life crap. Yeah. Well, I had 4 indictments. Well, that's 160 years if you total all those 4 up. That's 160 years mandatory to life, and there's $1 million fine attached to each one. That's $16 million. I'm being arraigned, and Judge Elizabeth Kovakovich, who got her magistrate's position by Reagan, because only presidents can give you a magistrate position. Reagan gave her hers, and I'm thinking, oh, God, here we go. This is say no crap and all this, war on drugs crap going on, and I get this lady, And so there was nothing I could do. She said, they read off the sentencing and, what I had, and, what I had been indicted with. And I was let out on a $50,000 to get out on bond. And that lasted about 3 months. Yeah. And they put me in jail in the Fort Myers the jailhouse in the federal block, which was on the 4th floor. They had an entire cell block for federal inmates only because there were so many of us, that were, accumulating over time. The first 38 of us went, and then they started a domino effect with the mandatory minimums. So you get a couple of kids, and you have them squeal and tell on, you tell them you're going away for life. They're going to tell about their grandma and their grandpa and everybody that they can, because it's just a fact of life, right? But what happened by design rather than accident, and I didn't find this until, hindsight, years later when I start researching my own case and, talking to different people like John, John who was on the front page, who you and I both know from the gym.
Yeah.
Stories about, John in particular, about how they were wasting their time, What a waste of time this all was for us, And I'm thinking, yeah, John pretty much was, like that. But that was, that way of thinking was basically the consensus of all of them nowadays, Back then it was their job. Because John said, you were doing what you had to do, I was doing what I had to do. And he was U.S. Customs, that sort of thing. But when it came down, to the sentencing part of it, they wanted a cooperation. Now, if you cooperated with them and gave them names in places and, everything that you could. What they wound up doing was, okay, here's what we'll do for you. We'll give you immunity from prosecution. We'll hold one count back because we got to give you something. But we'll give you immunity from prosecution so you can openly and freely tell us about what you've been involved with without any reciprocity, which opened the door, literally, for everybody else to follow, because what happened was they were getting, 20, 30 people, 40 people, ultimately, 100, 200 some plus people in Southwest Florida alone went down on these Operation Peacemaker indictments. Wow. And what they were doing in order to, to significantly damage the operation, and what was taking place was to get as much information as they could to understand who's who and what's what and how and when and where. They were offering the same deal to just about everybody they were capturing. We'll give you immunity from prosecution. Now you can open up and tell us, because they're trying to get to the top somehow. This is their way of doing it. Well, so many people are being indicted and arrested. What wound up happening was the guys are going back to the people in Naples or Golden Gate or Everglades or wherever it was, or Pine Island or wherever it was they're from, saying, look, dude, they know your name. Your name's been talked. You've been told. They're coming. They're going to get you, ultimately. Take their deal. Agree to cooperate. I'm telling Jimmy, Teddy, and Willie and these guys, because they've got immunity.
They already know that.
They've got immunity. They were given immunity when they were, when they were given that opportunity.
Yeah. So
you can tell on these guys and not hurt them. So what happened? Everybody started telling back and forth, and nobody's hurting anybody, but they're getting out from under the life sentences.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, that was done by design, come to find out, that because the United States government, it wasn't because of their benevolence, it was simply because of their empathy. It didn't seem right putting young 20-year-olds in prison for life when only a year earlier they were giving their mom and dads and uncles and that 4 years and 3 years and 2 years.
Yeah.
So they give them this opportunity to bail out. But when that opportunity fell on me, who am I going to tell on? They want to know who's in Miami. They want to know where I'm flying off to, because they tracked our jet. And Carlito and Leo and I bought a business Lear. It was 2 years old. We paid just under $1 million for it in those days. And I was using it to fly to Jamaica, to Colombia, to Central America, like that. No passports, none of that shit, just under the wire, here we come. And they want to know who I'm going to, who I'm seeing, who's in Jamaica, who's in Colombia. Well, you're not getting that shit. Even though in the 10 years I was involved in this stuff, I never saw a gun but one time.
That's
you
crazy.
Throw one of these guys under the bus, they're just going to come back and do what they're really very good at, and that's kill you, your brother, your mother, your sisters, your dog, your uncles, your aunts, and the cat and the goldfish if they can find it.
Man.
So you're not getting this out of me. Skipping forward, ultimately wound up happening was they would take me out about twice a week out of my jail cell on the 4th floor in Fort Myers, belly chain me, handcuff me, chain the handcuffs to the belly chain, shackle my ankles together, and run a chain from the belly chain around me to the shackles between my ankles. And they'd walk me out of that building, and I'm doing what they call the convict shuffle. I'm going around the sidewalk out of the county jail into the federal building next door. I'm going down the sidewalk in the morning. Good morning, good morning. Like this. They take me down this dank hallway. They smell like old books. And they open this door up, and there's a chair in there, and there's a window with one of those little squawk boxes. Talk through like a bank used to have. And they set me down, and in come this man and this woman in identical brown vested suits. And they reach in unison and pull out their little gold badges and slap it against the window. The United States Treasury. And out loud I said, oh shit, like this, and my prosecutor, my United States prosecutor, Susan Daltuva is her name. She comes running through the door. She goes, no, Timmy. She says, no, this is not what you think it is. And I said, well, Susan, why don't you tell me what I think this is? She says, well, it's not about cooperation, because we know you're not willing to do that. And I said, yeah, that's right, because if it is, you can just open that door and take me right back where you got me from. She says, no, it's not about any of that. She says, what we'd like to know, and if you're willing to tell us, was how you were able to do all of this for nearly a decade, and we couldn't catch you. And I said, well, hell, I can tell you that. I can tell you how stupid you guys are, all day long. And I asked these two agents, a couple of questions. I said, I have questions for you first, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I said, first of all, how many roads are there into Everglades City and out of there? How many? Well, there's one. Well, yeah, there's one road going there. And I asked the second question. I said, how many roads are there from there to Miami? Well, there's one. US 41. And I said, well, okay, now, third question is, how do you think we got all that stuff to Miami? It didn't go back on the backs of pelicans and porpoises, man. It went down that one damn road. And that 99 times out of 100, they're probably waving at you when they went by,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Then came the discussions about the amounts and the money. The money got to a point where, like I said, sometimes you wait 2 or 3 weeks to get paid. So I'm holding your pay. But in that 2 or 3 weeks, I've done 3, 4, 5 jobs. Now I'm stacking this stuff up. Like when I was a kid, I was getting paper bags full of money slid at me, not remembering what job I had done to earn that bag.
Yeah. It
was just out of control, crazy like that. But it also got to a point where, the money's all well and good, but damn the money. That's why we never wanted to own it, because it's ridiculous amounts of money. At 150 tons is. Is well over $170 million at least. What the hell are we going to do with that? So we didn't want to. That's why we never owned it, never wanted to sell it, none of that crap. It was hard enough, getting paid the amounts we were getting paid. Because at that, there was a time at which, I had 7 money counting machines that I had gotten from Bank of America in Miami that are capable of counting 70 bills a second. They were still too slow. I had 7 of them because we have a money house that I go to in Coral Gables that this master room has hundreds, this one has 50s, this one has 20s, this one has 10s, and there's an 8-car garage out back with 5s in it. Because $1 million in 5s would fill this little room we're in, jammed in. But getting paid, I couldn't take all hundreds or 50s. I had to take some of each denomination. So I'm counting and ledging and counting. And now we're up in the 50, 30 to $60 million, because sometimes 2 or 3 jobs pay would come in at once. And I would have to, it's counted when they get it, but when I get it, I have to count my money. And it got to be at a point where I'm counting money and I should be hauling shit. Or I should be working with my crew. Or I should be doing something but sitting here counting money.
You're losing money by counting money.
Exactly. Imagine that. Imagine that becoming an issue, right? So we did what everybody else in those...
You had big problems, Tim.
What everybody else was doing in those days who was handling any significant amount of money was weighing it. And it's surprisingly very accurate because, each bill weight. This is not stuff you can Google this stuff now and they'll tell you, but then we just had to figure it out. And each bill, no matter what denomination, weighs a gram. There's 28 of those in an ounce. There's 16 of those in a pound. It's just math from that point, you know. So we would have to go through it one time, like we go into the room with a laundry basket, scoop it full of bundles of hundreds, and each bundle has 2 rubber bands on it. Each rubber band weighs a gram. So you have to initially count how many bundles you've put in here that weighs 100 pounds. Then you subtract, because you've counted, you subtract how many grams are in rubber bands in that box. You subtract that from the pile. Now you know exactly what 100 pounds of 20s is. 110 pounds. Yeah. So you know that 22 pounds of hundreds is exactly $1 million.
Yeah, versus waiting for...
$240 pounds in tens is $1 million.
You just throw stacks on the scales and go, let's take off 4.
Yeah, so now we're using an industrial scale with a basket on it. Now we're just dumping the baskets in there, waiting for it to get, okay, there's $1 million. So now I can count $50 million in an afternoon.
You just deduct the basket, deduct the rubber bands. And
we'll just deduct the rubber bands. You don't have to do that once because you already know now when you get to this number, the rubber bands are already taken out of it.
102.
So you have to do that for the first 10, for the first, hundreds, 50s, 20s, 10s, 5s. You do that one time. Now it's the point of just bumping them in there until it gets to that number. Now you know. Now, the accuracy by which, this whole stuff is hinging on, I would say you might lose $1,000 every million. Maybe.
Yeah.
But who cares? Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
The reality of it is that it would actually take me longer to get the money home than it took me to give them their stuff, because I'm not bringing it all home in one bundle, because it would take a semi truck to do it. You know, because like I said, we're weighing this shit. I'm literally weighing thousands of pounds of money, tons of money, literally. And you're not bringing tons of money home in the back of a car, you know, not at once.
That's what always the funny misconception about TV, right? Because you watch TV shows and you see the guy that grabs the $1 million, $2 million, $3 million in cash, throws it over the shoulder and takes off running, right?
You just read my brain, because I'm every podcast that I've had the pleasure of telling this part of a story to ends up with that very scenario, brother, right there. You seeing a guy running, slinging a duffel bag full of cash? No.
Yeah, not happening.
He's dragging that damn thing behind him, man. He's not jumping over walls and shit with it. But that's Hollywood, right?
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
this is reality I'm talking about, you know, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to see this and they're going to go, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Well, I'm here to tell you.
I can carry $100 million. Yeah, try it.
Yeah. I'm here to tell you that none of this is a secret. I mean, for one thing, St. Martin's Press, being the world's largest publisher of the English language, is not about to back and support and publish bullshit. I was vetted through the whole process. In the very beginning, with all the executives of St. Martin's Press, there was Susan Robinson, who's the publisher. There was Mark Resnick, who's the senior executive editor. And they have the executive of paperback sales, executive of hardback sales, you know, all these people on the phone, executives on the phone at once with me. My agent's freaking out, going, dude, don't freak out. You know, I said, Peter, I got this, man. Get him on the phone, right? Yeah. And through all the discussion, Mark Resnick, this editor, senior editor, has championed my story to the publisher. The only question she had for me in this conversation with these executives was about validation, because of the craziness and the money and the amounts that I'm talking about. And she said, can you validate, you know, what it is you're writing about? And I said, well, let me see. Who would you like to speak to? There's Customs, there's DEA, there's FDLE, there's CIA, there's Secret Service, there's ATF, Florida Sheriff's Trident Task Force. Who do you want to talk to? And she goes, perfect.
You're the perfect fit.
Perfect. So that's just there alone tells you that, you know, what I'm just describing to you in the book is a firsthand accounting. This is not made up. You know, to embellish. And people ask me about embellishing on the story. I'm like, dude, to have embellished upon what I've written, two things would happen. One, it would sound so ridiculously stupid that no one would ever believe it. Second, it would push it on beyond the realm of human possibility, on that edge is which we were working. You couldn't work any more than that, or it would just be beyond what humans are capable of. So I had to write to you exactly, you know, what happened, because if you want to know the historical text on the humble beginnings of what is now becoming legal across the United States, there it is, right there.
It's crazy. If you haven't read the book, you got to check it out. It's incredible. So, Tim, you know, it's just an insane story, by the way, right? You know, you go through all this, you sit in jail for 4 years, right? Right. What was it like getting out of jail? You know, with technology that changes so frequently, if you were in jail for 6 months, you'd get out and things would be different, right? So 4 years, what happened? Because that was what year, 1980?
That was 89 to 92.
Okay, so there was a lot of things happened in those years. 89 to 93, that was my high school graduation.
Well, actually 88 to 92. I got out January 1st, 1992.
That time frame, there wasn't a ton of technology. I mean, there was, but what was it like?
There were computers, there was Word software, that kind of thing, but there was no internet. You know, nothing of that nature.
Phones were not really a thing. I mean, phones
there were no
a
digital
big deal.
phones. The phones that
Beepers.
my Miami guys were using, they called them the brick phone.
Yeah.
They looked like a brick.
Yeah, beepers.
And beepers were prevalent.
People wearing weird pants when you got out, Cavarici pants. Remember the Cavaricis, you know?
Yeah, well, there was parachute pants prior to that.
Parachute pants. People went from breakdancing to Z Cavarici in that time.
Oh, my God, rap. Oh, my Lord. When I was in federal holding in county jail was when MTV raps first come on television. Everybody wanted to be a rap star. Everybody was banging on every piece of metal in their cell block, and all you could hear all day and all night long was MTV raps on the TV and people banging on stuff. And I got to tell you, that killed rap for me, man.
Yeah.
I can't even begin to listen to it at all. You know what I mean?
Is that when you said, why is everybody putting lines in the side of their hair? Because that's when you got out. That was the thing. Those 4 years was when that started to happen.
Things changed quickly, and that became evident to us more in this world, regarding prison, in retrospect, rather than what we were doing prior, because the technology being used against us was pretty significant at the time. But that being said, I also knew that there was one of the Everglades National Park Rangers was one of my crew. And he introduced me to a Cuban guy in Miami that was the counter-surveillance technology expert. He was the guy that the government and the police departments of Broward and Dade County were going to for their counter-surveillance technology. So I was buying as good, if not better, technology than they had and using it against them.
Sure.
John DC, my buddy from U.S. Customs, even admits in a video we did with Viceland that our intelligence and technology was far better than theirs.
Yeah.
Only because we had the money and the resources. They were governed by the government, obviously, and they could only do so much.
Yeah.
But
it's crazy.
Yeah, and it did change significantly, and it was a bit of an adjustment.
I could imagine. I imagine how tough that would be, being in there for 4 years. So when you get out, right? I mean, you learn all these things, right? You hustle to do your thing when you're a young kid, don't realize what you're doing, but you're doing it. It becomes bigger, and then it becomes real big after the first night, which changed your life. So what have you learned about life, and about money and success, now versus before? Because now you're a grandfather. You got two.
I have two
grandkids.
granddaughters. Yeah.
So what's it like now?
Liberating. Is the first word that comes to mind. I can tell you for certain that of all of that I got involved in, and I can guarantee your listeners that you've only heard a fraction of what's taken place. And out of all of that life that I lived, I come away with two things. One, I can tell you exactly what a house full of money looks like. And two, I can tell you now, quite honestly, what very little difference in my life it made.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's simple. It's as simple as that. Because when you go in to a scenario such as this, and you're looking and facing the amount of time that I was facing, and a lot of others were too, prior to that, you have so many friends, you don't have enough fingers to count them all. When I got in prison, when I went to prison and I got out, I had friends that I could count on one hand, and I had fingers left over.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So it's a flash in the pan. And you don't realize that because it's life coming at you, and you just deal with it as it comes at you. It's not until, you're in that retrospective mood that it all becomes clear, and then you can define and put a point on the type of questions that you're asking now.
Yeah.
What is my world like now? Humbling, to tell you the truth. A philosophy of life that I've tried to learn quite consistently, and I'm not really that good at it, is an attitude that I got while I was in prison, and that is simply that there isn't anybody on this earth that can make me mad, can make me sad in any way. You can't make me happy. You can't make me laugh. You can't dictate any emotion to me that I won't do myself. If I want to laugh, I'll do that on my own, thank you.
You're a good laugher,
If you piss me off, that's because I let you piss me off, and I will be pissed off. But if I approach it in the sense that you pissed me off, well, who's in control of Tim now? Not me, you. Well, I can tell you one thing. I absolutely guarantee you nobody will ever be in control of Tim, because you can't make me mad. You can't make me sad. You can't make me happy or glad or any of that crap.
Sure.
I'll do that myself.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that's another thing I've come away with.
Yeah,
and it's
for
a philosophy of life that I've tried to live by, and it's not easy to do. It's really very difficult. And it's the humbling part of it comes to when people hear the story, and they hear all these craziness and these amounts and things like that. And I think about it myself, and I'm thinking, well, I have a granddaughter. I have two granddaughters. I have two fabulous kids, a son and a daughter, that I raised basically on my own. Their mom wasn't in the picture. You know, and I took this on my own, and I gave up my life with my friends and all that stuff and dedicated it to my children. And I never hired a babysitter. If I couldn't take my kids with me, well, I didn't go. They're not invited to this party, or I'm not going. It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
And then I go on this, you know, writing this book, because I was at a point where in my life where I'm working construction, and I'm hearing people come up to me and say, tell my buddy one of those crazy stories that, you know, that we were talking about, you know, like that. So I'd tell a story, and I would inevitably get the same response, and typically, wow, that should be a book, or they'll make an awesome movie. So I just decided one day, you know what? While I was in prison, everybody works. You got a job. You're assigned a position of doing something. If it's mopping, working in the kitchen, you know, whatever it is. We had an education building. Tallahassee Federal Correctional Institution is the hub of education within the Federal Bureau of Prisons. If you want an education of any type, you want a degree of any kind, you apply for a transfer you there, and the government will give you that degree if you apply yourself. This is what they call rehabilitation. In any other form, in any other way, in any other terms dictated, the word rehabilitation is a bullshit fucking word. It means absolutely nothing unless you're willing to be rehabilitated. They put this stuff in front of you, but you're not compelled to take it. Only if you choose to.
Sure.
So rehabilitation is an act upon yourself, you know, not anybody else.
Yeah.
So
Makes
I
sense.
took it upon myself to say, look, long story short, again, I wound up getting a job in the legal library in the education building. My workout partner, Rolando, you'll meet in the book, worked in the legal department, you know, education building, library actually, because every federal and state institution by law is required to have, inmates are required to have access to legal material. So there's a legal library in every federal and state institution in this country. So I took a job. He had an opening, you know, we got an opening. I met Dennis Lehman, the head con in the library. He was a bank robber. Been in 28 years when I first met him. Already been there for 28 years. He had 52. For bank robbery. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records for having been given the most amount of time for that particular crime, and he didn't even rob the bank. He was flying an airplane to take the two bank robbers away. But I'm working in the legal library, and Rolando and I decide, well, if we're going to be here a while, we might as well learn this stuff. So through a correspondence course at the University of Honolulu, we both got law degrees. I can do everything a lawyer can do except litigate, because I'm an ex-con. I have basically a glorified paralegal degree. But at the same time, I got an advanced degree in literary arts. I got a master's, and I got a degree in English literature.
Yeah.
Only because I had nothing else to do. I was working there,
Man.
and I figured I ought to know this stuff. So
Yeah.
that was the linchpin that precipitated my getting out of what the judge ultimately gave me, and backing up just a hair. When I was being sentenced that day, I had gone through all this questioning. Like I said, they would shuffle me around, and you know, for months they did this to me, asking questions, and all I could tell them was how they did it and how stupid they were about, you know, everything, but no names. If you can glean a name from anything I'm telling you, well, more power to you. Otherwise, you're not getting it from me. You're going to get the same thing you've always gotten, and that's, you know, what I'm willing to give you.
Sure.
That's not, you know, detrimental to my or anybody in my family's health. So that being said, what I did was I got my degree. I'm sitting in my desk one day, and I'm just flippantly going through a dictionary called Black's Legal Dictionary. Now, Black's Dictionary is the dictionary that defines the Latin terms, the legalese, to prosecutors and defense attorneys. All, you know, wherever you are, this is their Bible.
Yeah. So
I'm flipping through, and I come to cooperation. Their definition, Black's Legal Dictionary's definition, and basically what it's saying is that if you ask me for something and I oblige you by, you know, giving it to you, then I've essentially cooperated based on that definition. Mm-hmm. So I wrote my brief to the Middle District Courts of Florida for a reduction of sentence based on cooperation, which they said I wasn't giving them substantial enough cooperation. So my $1.2 million attorney got me my sentence capped at 20 years, but they couldn't give me less than 10 because 10 was the mandatory. So when it came to sentencing, the judge whacked me in the middle and gave me 10 simply because I was gracious enough to help them understand my world and how sophisticated it really was. And she thanked me for that valuable information and wound up giving me the 10 max instead of the 20 she could have hit me with. So when I wrote this brief for reduction of sentence based on cooperation and their definition of cooperation, I said, well, you asked me for my fine, which was reduced to $4 million. You asked me for information on how this all works, how we did this. I spent months telling you this. Well, I pretty much cooperate. So I wrote this brief, and I had sent it in. And the day it was being ruled upon, the judge was reading, and the day it was going to be ruled upon, I sent my brother to hear it because I was capable of being what they called on a writ. They writ you out of prison, which means that they transfer you back home, blah, blah, blah. I sit in front of the judge, and they send you back to prison. Well, that would have meant it already took me 3.5 years to get my bunk from the middle of the room because we're in dormitory-style units in Tallahassee. This is not jail cells locked in crap. You're in a room with 175 convicts that you better get along with every freaking one of them because otherwise you're sleeping with one eye open because you got cubicles and bunks, two guys to a cubicle.
Right in the middle.
So I'm in the middle of the room. It takes me 3.5 years to get to the bunk next to a window in the wall because you're in a place where guys have 40, 60 years, and the only way you're getting moved is if somebody dies or somebody gets paroled out. Yeah. And it took me 3 years to get to the wall, so I wasn't going anywhere. So I sent my brother. I'm not going to go through this shit again. So here we are. I wait 3 hours in line for the phone. I call him. He says, were you dating that prosecutor or something, man? Because she talked really good about you. I said, dude, stop screwing with me, man. Just get to it. How much did I wind up with? And he said 4 years. And I said, dude, come on. I said, seriously. Because I wasn't expecting much because, maybe a year or two, maybe shaved or something like that. Because when we were being arraigned, and she mentioned that $16 million fines, well, the guy standing next to me, Ted, he goes, why don't you make it 30? Just repeat being Teddy, right? And that magistrate, I could see this blue vessel sticking out of her forehead. She was coming unglued. She took her glasses off and threw them down on her desk, and she says, Mr. McBride, she pointed her finger right at me. She says, you're in serious trouble, Mr. McBride. She says, the men and women of this country didn't fight World War I, World War II, Korea. And I'm thinking, oh, God, here we go. Vietnam, for you to mess it up with drugs. And she's screaming like this. And I'm looking over at Teddy, and then I glance in my peripheral. There's 7 of us. Each of us lawyers sitting behind us. And I turn around, and all 7 of them are going, shut the fuck up. They're going to Teddy, shut up. Yeah. So I wasn't expecting much. When he said 4 years, I thought, nah, I don't know. But it was 4.
Wow.
So at this time now, I've been 3.5 years. I got 6 months. I don't have 6 more years. I got 6 months.
That's
I'm going home. And, it was surreal. And I wrote about what happens to a person when they spend nearly a lifetime in prison, let alone 4 years. I wrote about my buddy George. Now, the book, when you read it, is woven between games of gin rummy that I'd play with this bank robber buddy of mine at night in our unit every night, and we tell each other stories. And I go into a story about one of these crazy pot-hauling adventures. And then the lights would go out, and we'd be the next day in prison. I talk a little bit about prison. We're playing cards again, and it alternates back and forth like that. And I woke up in the middle of the night thinking that's how I was going to do it. It was really strange how it came about, because I knew the story I needed to tell had to include these people because they were very important to me in my life. But I wrote about George, and George was a bank robber as well. And I told his story that he was granted parole finally. After 33 years, he was granted parole. And long story short, he wound up back in prison again. He got himself caught again. Because when he found out he had parole, now this sounds vaguely familiar like Shawshank Redemption, but they impart the story rather well because they couldn't have told it. Frank Darabont, when he wrote this in Shawshank, couldn't have done it any better. He portrayed to a T my friend George. He came back scared to death. Yeah. He's going home. He's scared to death. And his ex-wife, who was married long ago and had their family and all grown up and stuff like that, agreed to take him in. You know, if he got out, he had a place that, you know, he could come to. And so I knew what effect it had on a man after 33 years and how he wound up, you know, I'm not going to give away that part of the story. You've heard it.
I have, yeah.
And that's a significant part of the story, which is why I felt it compelled to write about him, because he was like a father to me.
I remember that. Yeah, he was important to you.
And I sat down when he walked out that door to go home. I literally sat down in the middle of the yard and I cried.
Yeah.
I feel it now.
Yeah.
That's how much of an impact it had on me, you know. But when I got out finally, I would find myself at times waking up in the middle of the night, you know, frightened about where am I, trying to recognize where I'm at, you know, or I'd be in a mall, in the Coastland Mall, having ridden there on my 10-speed from Golden Gate to the mall just to buy something and get back because I had to, you know, and on that journey to Coastland and in the journey back on the bicycle, I would, several times I'd had these panics. Did I call my parole officer? You know, am I out of bounds? You know, do they know I'm at the mall? You know, I'm just crazy shit because they had such control on you. You know, controlled movement every 5 minutes to the hour. A voice comes over the speakers. The move is on. The move is on. Inmates, move is on. You got 5 minutes to get from where you are to where you're going until they lock everything down. And if you're not where you're supposed to be or where you intended to be and you get locked out, you're out of bounds. And the next thing you can expect is a couple of cops to be standing on the back of your neck and handcuff you and put you in jail inside prison. That's the whole.
Man.
And to come away from that and get home, and my brother asking me, did I want to play cards with him? I haven't played a game of cards since.
Puts you right back. Brings you right back to...
And it's hard to talk about even now.
Moment.
You know, I said, I've never played a game of cards ever since I left prison because I played them with George.
Yeah. Man, that's deep.
I just can't bring myself to do it. And my family growing up, my grandma and aunts and uncles and all of us were card players.
Yeah.
You know, gin or, you know,
I wonder
spades and all that.
I kind of wonder just from the mindset part of it, if you were to play, to get that that wound, you know, to start healing, right? It's like sometimes we have things we don't want to go back to, things of the past, stories, whatever it is, and we don't want to touch on those because it brings us back to a spot.
Right.
But sometimes it's good to do that to maybe get over it. So
remembering is good.
So maybe that would be maybe that's something that you shoot for, and you know, to do it, because I think it would help you.
And I think, you know, and this is a portion of the story that I don't readily talk about a lot, and you brought it out.
Yeah.
And but it's in the book, and I don't talk about it for reasons that seem obvious. It's overwhelmingly emotional to me. I bring it out because of exactly what you said. The more I talk about it, the less it hurts me.
Yeah.
It's like anything that you need to get accustomed to as a human being.
Yeah,
it's natural reaction for us to be.
We
constant exposure definitely leads to a certain amount of contamination. Sure. You know, so I was thoroughly contaminated at that point.
Yeah, I hope at some point, you know, maybe a card game in the near future would be the goal. Maybe that's your goal.
Right. Well, you know, a lot of things I've overcome with that regard, you know, as far as what they call institutionalization. And that's a real thing, and I can testify to that. It was only 4 years, but I mean, when you say only, God, 4 years is a long time.
Yeah.
It's a good chunk of your life that's gone by.
Yeah.
And during that whole time, then you're locked in behind a fence like that. Your vision becomes narrow.
Sure.
You don't look. You find yourself not looking beyond the fence any longer to see what's there. You stop looking down through the woods in the wintertime when there's no leaves on the tree to see the red lights and the cars going by on the road down there. You stop looking at that stuff.
That's right.
And I had to talk to my brother one day on the phone. I had to collect, and tell my mom and dad and everybody else not to visit me, because I got a visit from my mom and dad, and the hardest thing in the world was to go back in.
Oh yeah.
So I said, "Don't come, because
I'll be out. I'll see you when I get out.
I'm okay without you being here.
Yeah.
You know,
it just makes it harder for me.
It's like starting all over again.
That's right.
So I said, just don't come. But
That's
one
deep.
thing that did hurt me and he knew it. It was my oldest brother, Mac, who passed away a few years ago. I only got one letter while I was in prison. Only one person ever wrote to me, my grandma. And I wrote about this too, when she told me about my great-grandpa Daniels, who was the Grand Underground Railroad in Ohio, and my great-uncle, Warren G. Harding, president. And she said that when she mentioned Harding having had run one of the most corrupt presidencies in the history of the United States, felt compelled to impart this information to me and to let me, in a sort of a way, know that our family tree has taken a curve down a dead branch every now and then, and it doesn't surprise me that your branch of the tree took that turn too. So, don't be too hard on yourself about what she was trying to tell me.
Sure.
But she was giving me a bit of history that I never knew about my family.
Sure.
And when I got out and my first trip home, when I was finally, I wasn't given parole. I was given what they called supervised release, which is way different than parole, because the sentencing that I was given and the guidelines under which I was sentenced didn't provide for parole. They were non-parolable sentences, even though the mandatory sentences were mandatory minimums, at the time of this goings on. But my last crime, as far as they know, that Pine Island dump, they called it, that happened before September 1st, 1987.
Yeah.
So I was actually considered old law, not the new mandatory law. But this judge, Kavakovich, found a statute under the old law that provided for exactly what the new law does, and no parole, none of that stuff. So she wound up screwing me anyways.
Yeah. Oh, man. That's crazy.
Well, there's one thing that I did want, to impart to everyone that is really very relevant to what I've written, as far as historical content and what people have are facing, currently in our country. And what that is quite simply the ability to make a legal choice now about smoking marijuana. Certain states, like Florida in particular, has a medical use for marijuana. A lot of states now, and including Florida, soon will be recreational as well. And all that tells me is that what we were doing in those days is a progenitor to what people are experiencing today. Now, my sole purpose, in these podcasts that I do is not only to impart to you how this all worked and how it all happens and like that. It's not in any way being braggadocious. And if I do sound that way, I apologize. I don't mean to be.
It doesn't come across at all.
I don't mean to be that at all. All I'm trying to do is help you understand exactly what took place. So when it comes time for you to make this decision, now that you have a legal choice to make, how do you want to go into making this decision? Do you want to, for example, take into consideration what's happening on our southern border between Mexico and ourselves? People are getting killed daily. 30,000, 40,000 people a month being executed in horrific ways. Cartels taking over, different sections of our border, fighting over these crossings, if you will. And if you take a picture of this poor Mexican guy with a bale strapped to his back, having just crossed the Sonoran Desert on his way to Phoenix with this bale, and getting it there in lieu of his family being held hostage in Mexico for some whatever reason, or show them a picture of a medically grown and glistening bud of marijuana, and ask them, which would you rather smoke? You know which one they're going to point to. Now, having said that, in reality, and what I'm trying to help you understand is that making this decision, do you want to go and make it under that understanding, or do you want to hear how a group of people who were families and generational did it for decades and generations without firing one single shot at anybody? We never hurt anybody. Yeah. We never put anybody in jail. We never forced it down anybody's throat. And continue what my buddy Teddy said next to me about the 16 million. He says, well, when she said, the amounts, we were talking about the amounts, he says, well, we just couldn't get it in here fast enough.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear that.
Yeah,
because somebody was taking it. It was going somewhere. So do you want to have this decision made now that you have a legal choice to make? Do you want to go into it envisioning this cool Rasta dude out in the middle of his field in his dreads and his cool dreads and his cutoffs, and he's just tending to his ganja bud? Or this Colombian family and this guy in his white cotton hat and cotton blouse and pants out in the fields working with his wife and kids running around his feet? Do you want to go into it having that impression? Or do you want to hear about these Mexicans that are fighting and killing one another?
Yeah.
I'm bringing it to you in the way that it should have been done, the way that
real.
it can be done.
Yeah.
So if you're going to make a choice, make it knowing this is a way that it can be done.
And it's truly an amazing story because, when I look at it, I mean, you've done all what you've done. You've only saw a gun one time. Well, one time really. And, the best part of the story, though, and the moral of the story or the message, we kind of covered a little bit ago, which is so intriguing to me. And that's for you. The money aspect of it didn't change, didn't do anything to you.
Nope.
It didn't do anything, right? Now, the meaning of life for you, you realize that maybe a little bit later in life than some people do. Sometimes in a normal life, right? A crazy life, you may have kids and realize that at maybe a little bit of a younger age, but you probably realize that more when you start having grandkids and then you get out and go, this is life. And,
I am just thrilled to death at the prospect, and every time I think about it, of just being able to have kids to begin with.
Yeah.
If the sequence of events had not taken place the way they did, you and I would not be having this conversation right now.
Yeah. We'd be,
I don't take that for granted. Every single day of my life, I don't take it for granted. Because when somebody calls me and says, "Hey, Timmy, this is Joe Pavich, come and do my podcast with me," I'm there. I'm there in a dime without hesitation, simply because, this is what I do now. You know, I can put all the fear and the loathing and everything that came with it and all the little, subtle intricacies that happen along the way. You forget about that.
Yeah.
And you remember only the good stuff, and the positive things. And that's the message I want to portray, is a positive message. I don't want to be bragging about none of this shit because it doesn't matter.
Well, it was your life.
And the money didn't matter. And the money to me now doesn't matter,
And that's the message right there. It's the success of it now. Your success isn't the money. It's the family. It's your kids, your grandkids.
When is the last time you saw a funeral procession and the hearse was pulling a U-Haul? You never did you?
No.
You can't take it with you.
That's right.
You know what?
That's a good point right there. It's a good point.
I have my bills paid. I have a roof over my head. I have the ability to wake up in the morning and say, maybe I'll go to Chicago and see my buddy Joey.
Yeah.
Or I'll fly out to LA and talk to my buddy Johnny. And I have the ability to do that. I'm a happy man. Because my daughter's taken care of, my granddaughters are taken care of, my son and my daughter are turned out to be two of the most magnificent kids a father could ever ask for. And somewhere along the line, having gone through everything that I did, I wound up I'll pat myself on the back. I was a good father.
Yeah.
I was there for them when they needed to be.
And that's what it's all about. It's about being in the moment, being a good parent, being a good grandparent.
That's what's important.
See, that's life right there. Talking with a guy, we see the story, but the story, was the process. But what you gathered after is what made you.
Like I said, the entire learning concept of this came in retrospect.
Yeah.
It didn't come while it was happening.
Man, great show today, Tim.
I appreciate reaching out to me,
Joey. I appreciate you. And I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. I got the Saltwater Cowboy. Check out the book. Check him on Audible. And also, Tim, if you don't mind telling the viewers where they can find you and find more information about the book.
Yes, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at Original Saltwater Cowboy. Not to mention the fact that I have people all over the world that are purchasing my book, and they're seeing these podcasts all over the world. And I'm also fond of giving out my email address and saying, look, if you purchase my book, email me at pothaler, POTHAULER @gmail.com, and I will explain to you briefly how simple it is for you to send me your book. I'll sign it and have it safely sent back to you.
Tommy
with
Chong.
Return postage
Chong
included, otherwise you're not going to get it back.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mr. Chong.
Mr.
God
Chong.
bless you, man.
That's a cool story, by the way. You got the book right here, by the way.
Yeah.
But I hope you guys enjoyed the show. The Joe Pavich Podcast.com, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or Joe Pavich Jr. joepavich.com and the joepavich.podcast.com. Hope you enjoy.
Thank you.
Rise up, king. I'd rather build or destroy.